It was already quite late. Emotional exclamations and comments could be heard coming from his apartment in a high-rise building. He stayed up until 3 in the morning, but didn't want to quit his game. He was drawn into the process, especially since he was starting to get somewhere. He caught and defeated several opponents. However, he couldn't cope with one of them. He was angry and banged his mouse hard on the table. 2 players were trying to eliminate more and more people. Yuhan was at level 98. A young guy named Yi Xuan was sitting in front of the computer. He understood that in order to win, he only needed to absorb these strong players. Then he would reach first place. He was very close to his goal. Then he would get his million prize in cash. He craved it. Ye Xuan only wanted to win and get his million. He caught one of the strongest players and pressed the absorption button. He rejoiced and shouted that the other player deserved it. The mouse in his hand was almost burning under the pressure and stress. The game was heating up, and then a bright light appeared on the monitor. It was so strong that it literally blinded Yi Xuan for a minute. The computer monitor began to glow brighter and brighter. And for a second, the guy even thought that some kind of energy was coming out of his screen. The whirlwind spun him harder and harder. Ye Xuan decided that this couldn't be happening. It all seemed implausible. He still didn't understand what had happened. However, a couple of minutes later, a pillar of light appeared in the sky above the high-rise building where he lived. It was late at night in Prefecture E. It was raining. A man appeared on the roof of one of the buildings. He was enveloped in invisible light. It was Ye Xuan himself. At first, he didn't understand where he was, and only wondered whether he was dead or still alive. Then he looked around a little, and realized that the place was familiar to him after all. He began to fall down. Out of fear and surprise, he screamed again. He was in shock. After falling onto the roof of another building, Ye Xuan realized that he felt no pain at all. It was surprising and incomprehensible to him. Then a man appeared. He literally walked through Ye Xuan, as if he did not exist in that place. He was like a ghost to everyone. After a couple of minutes, Ye Xuan realized that none of the people present could see him. He was invisible to everyone. Looking closely at the man and seeing his costume, he realized that he was an assassin. He told the monsters opposite him that they had strong nerves, since they dared to come to Prefecture E. The monster with burning eyes just smiled. Ye Xuan understood that now there would be a bad situation. The assassin added to the uninvited guests that since they were here and had encountered him, they were very unlucky. He began to use his magic. Yi Xuan looked closely at the assassin's face and realized that this man was his exact double in appearance. The monster replied that such behavior angered them. The assassin said that since they dared to come here, they would suffer. However, the monsters were not afraid of him and only said that they had come for him. Ye Xuan tried to get close to one of the people present and realized that he couldn't see him at all. The guy told the man that he didn't think it would be so easy to lure him into their trap. It turned out that his name was the same as Ye Xuan's. Incredible. He replied that he had been wondering who these guests were. It turned out that it was the defeated general. His name was Chen Song. Ye Xuan added that they probably wanted a fight in which he would defeat them all. The monsters took off their masks and replied that he was just a cocky kid who hadn't yet experienced their power for himself. Chen Feng and Chen Song were dissatisfied. Chen Feng started yelling at Ye Xuan that he didn't like this chatter, and that today he would personally teach the guy a lesson. Their fight began. He added, as he ran at Ye Xuan with his fists, that he would show him that there were people in this vast world who were more talented than him. He pushed his brother aside. He used a 4th-class skill called Exploding Thunder Strike. Ye Xuan was able to block all of his attacks with ease. Next, the man used the popular Tongbei Strike. It was also a 4th-class skill and ability. The ghost Yi Xuan sat on the sidelines and watched everything closely. He was amazed by this advanced martial art. He thought that if he had a physical body, he too could become better in this world. However, he looked at Ye Xuan and saw one thing. He was not very agile. Chen Song fought at the level of his brother. He kicked Chen Feng. He had to win. He had no place in Lianyun City. Ye Xuan was clearly talented in combat. Everyone noticed that. But an enemy lurked in the shadows with a sharp weapon up his sleeve. He watched the fight. He jumped up to Ye Xuan and told the guy that he was fighting well now, and the blows were excellent. However, he needed to take the fight more seriously. The ghost of Ye Xuan noticed the trick and shouted to his real-world counterpart to be careful. However, no one could hear him. Ye Xuan realized with horror that he had been hit by a sharp weapon and seriously wounded. Blood gushed from the cut. Chen Feng realized that his brother had come to his aid. He caught Ye Xuan. Ye Xuan looked his enemy straight in the face. They both began to understand that today he would die at the hands of his brother. They laughed at him, calling him the first genius of Lianyun City. Ye Xuan could barely stand on his feet. The ghost Ye Xuan understood that a second-class dagger could not strike a second blow. He told his brother to deal with it, and if he wanted to destroy him himself, so be it. And everything happened in the next moment. Ye Xuan struck again, but received new damage. He lost consciousness and fell onto the stone floor of the staircase. His brother told the second one that they could no longer stay there and had to flee immediately. Ye Xuan had been eliminated. His brother agreed with him, and they both hurriedly left the place. The ghost of Ye Xuan approached his real body. He said, looking at his copy, that he thought he would become a ghost like him when he died. But he was wrong. Ye Xuan bent over the body and decided that perhaps only he was so special, or someone had deliberately involved him in everything that was happening here now. He said that it was foolish to greet and provoke those who had come to take his life in the first place. If he had been a player, he could have defended himself. Ye Xuan lay with his eyes open, and the ghost decided to touch them and close them. Then he heard someone's voice saying that the next life was here, and Ye Xuan must live it wisely. Something began to happen. Their bodies merged. In the morning, Ye Xuan's head hurt badly. He couldn't open his eyes. Someone's voice kept asking the young master how he was feeling. Ye Xuan opened his eyes and saw a girl. She was glad that he had woken up. It was Lure. The girl said she was scared for him. Ye Xuan replied only that he was fine. He knew that she was that guy's personal servant. However, he did not understand how he knew all this. He demanded that the girl bring him a mirror immediately. She said that she would bring everything to the young master right away. Seeing his reflection and understanding everything, Ye Xuan decided that first they had dragged him here, and then they had completely transferred him into the young master's body. However, he told Lure that he remembered Chen's song saying before the blow that Ye Xuan was the #1 genius in Lianyun City. The girl didn't understand anything. Ye Xuan looked at his reflection again, and added that now the unlucky boy could sleep peacefully because he would live this life well. He decided to help him take revenge and become the strongest man in the city. He promised his reflection that he would improve himself. He decided that this was his destiny. Lure, watching all this, told the young master that he should wait. He felt sick and started coughing up blood. He fell to the floor and groaned. Ye Xuan replied to Lure that he was fine and tried to get up. However, Lure replied that the head had told her that he had completely lost his cultivation. She added that his basic cultivation had been completely lost. Seeing that he couldn't get up, the girl began to give him some liquid to drink. Ye Xuan thought about how he just wanted to become a great master. Would his journey end before it even began? Lure decided to support him, so she told him to keep himself under control because his wounds had not yet healed, but they would still be able to restore his dantian. Kui said that there was a 100-year-old black blood ginseng in the treasure house, and that it might help restore his strength. Hearing her words, Ye Xuan's spirits rose. He had heard about it, and wanted her to take him to the treasure house. She understood that he hoped to recover as quickly as possible, so she immediately agreed to take him there. They walked to the treasure house, amid whispers about him from people on the street. Everyone was gossiping about what had happened to him. He was pale and did not look healthy at all. One girl told another that he had been attacked a few days ago. His dantian had been destroyed, and Ye Xuan had completely lost his cultivation. Now he was crippled. The other girl objected, saying she shouldn't talk like that. The master had always been good to them, and they would hope that he would recover. The girl agreed that she was wrong. She even felt sorry for him. He was a very good man and never took liberties with them. At the beginning of the month, he even helped her younger brother start cultivating. She lamented how unfair karma could be sometimes, so they continued on their way. When she saw the treasure house, Lure exclaimed that they had finally arrived. Ye Xuan saw the treasure house ahead. It was a beautiful pagoda. The road leading to it was paved with stone. Right in front of the treasure house stood 2 guards led by their third servant. The third servant, a plump, short man, sat at a table with an impassive expression, fanning himself with his fan. When Ye Xuan approached them, one of the guards stretched out his hand and ordered him to stop, adding that strangers were not allowed inside. They crossed their spears right in front of Zhuan's face, blocking his passage. Then he turned to the third servant and asked him to open his eyes and see who was in front of him. The servant finally recognized the young gentleman, whom he had not recognized at first, so he quickly began to apologize and ask for forgiveness. He asked what the young master needed here. Ye Xuan was interested in the 100-year-old black blood ginseng. Hearing that Ye Xuan needed something from the treasury, the servant said that for this, he had to bring an order written by the patriarch's hand, and nothing else would do. Lure was outraged by the servant's words. She said that in the past, the young master was allowed to take resources for cultivation without the patriarch's order. She asked what had changed now. The servant said that it was like that before, but now everything was different. Now the young master was not a prodigy, but a cripple. He added that he could no longer do anything worthwhile, and that the patriarch should not share his treasures with him. Luer could not tolerate such disrespect towards the young master. He had always treated him well. Now the servant was mocking his injury. The servant confirmed that Ye Xuan was indeed the young master, which was why he still addressed him as such. Anyone else would have been taken away by the guards. He asked Ye Xuan to understand that the resources remaining in the treasury were needed for cultivation by others, and that they could not be wasted on a cripple. He advised him not to waste any more time, and added that he had heard from reliable sources that the clan chief was planning to send him to the province. The servant also said that Yi Xuan would most likely rule some small village there. In just one night, the man had gone from being a young prodigy and the patriarch's favorite to a weakling dismissed by some bureaucrat. Ye Xuan pondered this. He also thought that somehow it all seemed too realistic. He turned around, ready to leave, and asked Luer to forget about it all and follow him. After all, talking would get them nowhere. Luer resisted and did not want to leave without the ginseng root, because without it, the young master could die. They should not believe the guard's words. She believed that they should ask the patriarch himself. Hearing these words, the servant shouted at them that it was foolish, because Ye Yuan was crippled, and what else could they expect? Just then, Kui appeared and addressed Ye Xuan, saying that the patriarch was looking for him. She informed him that the head was waiting for him in his hall. Luer thought that this was to their advantage, because they would be able to ask everything in person. Ye Xuan wondered why the patriarch needed him now, and asked Sui what she knew about it. He was curious about what he wanted. Kui was clearly hiding something, as evidenced by her confused look. She stood opposite him, and couldn't say a word, because Ye Xuan was so weak. Suddenly, this news completely overwhelmed him. Ye Xuan waited for an answer. Finally, she said that someone from the Lin family had arrived, and that they wanted to break off the engagement. This news about the engagement caused Luower to feel indignant and outraged. She did not understand why they would treat her young master this way. Ye Xuan thought that since it was about the engagement, he would go there immediately. Now he had to take matters into his own hand. Luer couldn't calm down after hearing the news, because a month ago, they themselves had initiated the wedding between the young master and Lin Shu. Kui advised him to be careful. After listening to her, they hurried to the meeting, as they were already late. The guests were sitting at the table. Apparently, they had been waiting for them for quite a while. Among the guests, Ye Xuan saw his uncle. His uncle also noticed him, and said that he had called him here because the Lin family wanted to discuss his marriage to Lin Shu. But he didn't have time to finish. Ye Xuan continued the sentence himself, because he already knew that they wanted to break off the engagement. He said so directly. Members of the Lin family were present at the table. Their powerful appearance and style of dress indicated their clan. Everything was adorned with precious stones. Upon hearing about the breakup of the engagement, Ye Xuan assumed that something like this would happen in the end, since he was now a cripple who had lost his tribute to Tian. The head of the Lin family addressed Ye Xuan with words of objection and assured him that this was not the case. He stated that he was the one who had insisted on this marriage, and that such a trifle would not make him change his mind. A man in an expensive cloak joined the conversation. He said that one of the best followers of the Tian Yuan sect had taken a liking to her and decided to take her as a disciple. That was why she had decided to break off the engagement, for his sake. This greatly surprised Ye Xuan. He couldn't believe that the Lin family had made up such a story to mock a cripple. The man decided that young people like him were sometimes ungrateful. He continued that Lin Shu had joined the sect and become the pride of their family. Naturally, she would become the object of courtship, and if people of her status found out that she was already engaged, it would not end well for him. Yi Xuan considered this statement presumptuous. He said that the laws of the empire did not exist for show, and that going against them required rare courage. This made the man laugh. He told Ye Xuan that he simply did not know what the Tian Yuan sect was capable of. He said that he was merely a defender of the Dharma, and that even he was not afraid of the empire. As if to confirm his own words, he declared that he could destroy the Xuanyan Empire, which Ye Xuan was trying to use as a shield. But he did not like to mock the weak. Otherwise, he would have decided the matter with Ye Xuan differently. Everyone sat at the table with their eyes downcast, not uttering a word of objection. Ye Xuan saw how frightened they were. It seemed that this man was telling the truth. The man was curious to know what the boy had decided. In fact, the whole family gathered there was curious about it. The uncle told Ye Xuan not to worry. All he had to do was voluntarily agree to break off the engagement, and they would return all the gifts. Ye Xuan thought about his words. How could he have forgotten about the dowry? He remembered that the father of the previous owner of this body had left him a fortune. If he could find the same amount again, or better yet, 3 times as much, he could buy the resources to restore Dan Tian. It was this plan that prompted him to agree to the breakup of the engagement and no longer argue about it with the Lin family. Ye Xuan made a counteroffer, saying that he agreed, but hoped to receive 3 times more than he had originally given as compensation. His uncle was so surprised that he jumped up from his seat and exclaimed that this was not the right thing to do. Ye Xuan tried to calm him down a little. He assured him that he had made up his mind and that, after all, he had his own opinion on the matter. Turning to Uncle Lin, he reminded him that he himself had proposed the engagement and now wanted to break it off. If he simply agreed, people would look at him as a laughingstock. He didn't want bad rumors to spread. The head of the Lin family was beside himself, but he pretended that everything was fine. Ye Xuan continued that if people started talking about such mockery on their part, the cultivators would not like the behavior of the Lin family. In conclusion, he said that they would act simply. Uncle Lin would return 3 times more than he had given to their daughter. He would tell everyone that the engagement was broken off on his initiative because he had lost his cultivation and lost his tribute to Tian. Ye Xuan said he was sure it was beneficial for all of them. The man laughed. He clearly liked this guy. A minute later, he became serious and said he agreed, even though he considered it blatant blackmail. Headland understood that 3 million was a large sum. His family would not be able to raise that much in an instant. The man said there was nothing to worry about. He turned his palm upward, causing a bright light to appear around it. Then a bottle appeared in his hand. It was a bottle of elixir containing 2 pills. He announced that each of them was worth 1.5 million. He turned to Ye Xuan and threw it into his hands. This was unexpected for everyone in the room, but for Ye Xuan, it was amazingly simple. He thought that if he had known this in advance, he would have asked for 5 times as much. He knew that they had the marriage contract with them. It was with Lure, and the girl carefully took it out. Lure wanted to hand it to him, but at that moment, it simply burst into flame. It burned up in her hands, and she didn't know what to do. The man and the head of the Lin family stood up and went to the exit, for the matter had been settled. Ye Xuan called out to the gentleman, because he did not know his name. Without turning around, the man asked why he needed it, whether he wanted revenge. Ye Xuan thought to himself at that moment that he might get something else from him. Such a simple and generous man. One cannot let such an opportunity slip away. Aloud, he only said that he would not dare. He just wanted to know his name, in case the time came when he wanted to become his disciple. The man noted his boldness, and said that in that case, he should remember his name. His name was Yu Jin, defender of the Dharma from the Tian Yuan sect. He noted that Ye Xuan was smart and persistent, and he regretted that he had lost Dan Tian. Otherwise, he might have taken him as a disciple. Ye Xuan watched them leave, and in the hall, only the remains of the table where they had been sitting a few minutes ago remained. Ye Xuan repeated his name once more. Defender of the Dharma from the Tian Yuan sect, Yu Jin. The young gentleman was holding a bottle of elixir in his hands, when suddenly it glowed, as if enveloped in golden threads of air. He watched, not knowing what would happen next. A window appeared, and Ye Xuan stared into it. Then everything happened on its own, and very unexpected. A sign lit up with the name Devours system. She said that a concentrated spiritual pill had been found, and asked if Ye Xuan wanted to consume it. His spirits rose. This meant that all was not yet lost. Heaven had left him a loophole. His uncle returned and saw that he was in a pensive state. He called out to the young man, but he didn't even hear him at first. The uncle wondered why he was daydreaming. Finally, Ye Xuan heard what he wanted. The uncle said that their family had spent millions to find a cure that could restore his strength, but it had been to no avail. Mr. Yu's words that he would never see martial arts again prompted him to think that perhaps he should give the pills to them. With their help, other children capable of cultivation would be able to achieve success. Ye Xuan replied that he had to refuse, because he already had plans for them. His uncle was not reassured. He understood that Ye Xuan was going to use them to return to martial arts, but that was impossible. Ye Xuan was too naive, and even if there was a medicine capable of restoring a destroyed Dan Tian, it would cost an unimaginable amount of money. Besides, when news of these pills spread, someone would surely attack him. It was better to think ahead. Xuan thought about how kind and wise this was. He asked where this wisdom had been when Yu Jin had given their clan his final word. As soon as he was able to drive him away, they needed his pills. One of the men of the Ye clan was outraged by Xuan's behavior. He asked how he dared to tell the clan leaders that they needed these pills. After all, they would only bring him trouble, but benefit the other children. They only wanted their family to become stronger. They turned to his uncle, outraged by Ye Xuan's insolence. All the men were heated. His uncle sighed, and turning to Ye Xuan, said that, in principle, they were all right. Standing with the clan members, he told him that it would be better if he gave them the pills. Ye Xuan believed his uncle's promise, and knew that he planned to send him somewhere far away to help his family with the children. He appreciated his uncle's kindness, but he replied that he had long since decided that an ordinary life was not for him. Ye Xuan announced to everyone that tomorrow he would leave the estate and start his own clan. Without giving the clan members time to react, he began to recite an oath that he, Ye Xuan, renounced all ties with the Ye family. They began to shout that he had gone mad, that he had decided to leave the family because of 2 pills. They called him an ungrateful child. They insisted that they had spent time and energy on, and that his uncle should punish him. They couldn't remember anyone in their family ever behaving so disgracefully. His uncle asked Ye Xuan once more if he was absolutely sure about his decision, or if there was a chance to change his mind. Ye Xuan was unshakable. He declared that he had made up his mind and would not stray from this path. To the surprise of the clan members, the uncle did not behave as they had expected. He told Ye Xuan that since he had made his decision, he would let him have his way. He respected his choice. He only asked him to be careful. The clan members were very stubborn. They wanted things to be the way they wanted, convincing his uncle that this was not right and that it would set a bad example. They asked him to think it over. The uncle angrily ordered them to be quiet. He said that no one should bother Ye Xuan anymore and that they would be blamed if they disobeyed his order. He turned to Ye Xuan with a parting word that Lure and her loyalty still belonged to him. Ye Xuan noted that his uncle was a reasonable man. He thanked him, and Lure also joined in the words of gratitude. After this conversation, the two headed for the exit, leaving the clan members with their unfulfilled interests. Ye Xuan changed into a traveling cloak and stood thinking about which direction to go. Lure also wanted to know where they were going. She was ready to follow the young master anywhere. The bag on her back was proof of that. He said that for now, they would stay at the Drunken Immortal Inn. Lure pointed out that it was an expensive inn and that they only had enough money for less than a month. She suggested choosing something less expensive, such as the Feng Li Inn. Xuan replied that half a month would be enough for him to recover. Lure was surprised but glad to hear that he had figured out how to restore his cultivation. He said that he had pills, and it would not be very difficult. The sign with the name indicated that they had arrived. Lure told him to rest while she went to look for food. Xuan was even glad that he would be left alone for a while, so he quickly agreed. He had to try to restore his cultivation as soon as possible. He took out a bottle of elixir. He prayed that everything would work out. He took a pill and remembered the command to devour. After he swallowed it, streams of energy spread throughout his body. These streams he felt were spiritual energy. It was even interesting. Apparently, his dantian was still recovering, because he saw that the progress level had reached 70%. The progress stopped at 95%. Apparently, 1 pill was not enough for recovery. He took a second pill. Something like a tornado swirled around him, and the progress reached 100%. The collection of energy for system recovery was complete. Suddenly, a new message appeared indicating that the system had been activated. It had detected that the user's dantian had been destroyed. The devouring process had begun. Xuan was terrified as he wondered what this devouring meant. Shouldn't it be restoring him instead? Then he felt unbearable pain in his abdomen. He didn't understand what was happening. It was as if all his organs were being twisted. He fell to the floor, writhing in pain. Lure, returning to their room, heard his moans. She didn't know what had happened to the young master, but when she saw him on the floor, she immediately rushed to him. The young master frightened her with his moans and cries. Slowly, the pain subsided. A new notification appeared. The devouring of dantian was complete. The devouring system was fully activated. Ye Xuan finally felt complete relief. Some kind of devouring had ended. He realized what was happening. His dantian had changed. He now had an absolute devouring system. It was capable of absorbing anything in order to turn it into spiritual energy and transfer it to its owner. Lure was very happy to learn that he had restored his cultivation and could not believe such an outcome. Ye Xuan told her how much pain he had been in, but now his dantian was normal and he could feel power flowing through his veins. Lure decided to ask the innkeeper to bring wine and set the table to celebrate this joyful event. She declared that it should be celebrated. Xuan was very hungry, so Lure's idea about food was timely. He asked her to hurry. Lure replied that she would do everything for the young master and would be back in a minute. The girl rushed out of the room, and the door slammed behind her. Ye Xuan sat on his haunches and looked at his hand. He felt his strength returning. He took control of the devourer system. The notification window told him that it was capable of devouring anything in order to turn it into spiritual energy and transfer it to its master. It turned everything into qi. Ye Xuan realized that what he needed was to devour something in order to turn matter into power. It was better and easier than cultivation. He was given a choice between the martial arts of his lineage and divine weapons. He studied everything carefully and decided to start with martial arts. There were only 5 schools. One of them was the school with the Stormblade technique. The next school was called the Roaring Tiger Fist. Then he saw the Falling Wild Goose Leg technique. This was the 4th school. And finally, there was the school of the strongest technique, the Returning Sand Palm. Ye Xuan was absolutely thrilled. He craved power. He decided that his martial arts skills would reach the 5th level, which meant he could learn absolutely all of the techniques presented. He decided to start with the Roaring Tiger Fist technique and chose it. But an error popped up in the notification window. It announced that Ye Xuan did not have enough points to practice this technique. He was surprised and confused. He asked the system what other points were needed. He needed to find out how to earn the necessary Devourer points. The system told him that in order to earn them, he needed to devour valuable items. Ye Xuan did not understand what this meant and decided to look around. He assessed the items in the room where he was, and then he saw a vase. It was a porcelain vase, and it seemed to him that it looked quite expensive, which meant it was valuable. He decided to use devouring and absorb this item, but then the system notified him of an error again. It said that his posture was incorrect, and then he realized that he should literally eat it. At first, he decided that this was complete nonsense, but he wanted to earn points so badly that he tried it and opened his mouth to try to swallow it. He was alone in the room and consoled himself with this thought. Lifting the vase above his head and opening his mouth, he noticed that it began to change size. The vase shrunk to the size of his mouth, and he was able to swallow it easily. When he was done with it, he decided that he had earned the points. However, the system notified him that the object he had swallowed had no value and was classified as trash. He didn't earn a single point. Ye Xuan decided that this was a deception and that he had been promised energy for literally everything. But the system began to explain everything. It said that in order to earn Devourer point, it was necessary to swallow valuable items. Ye Xuan thought for a minute and then understood what kind of value the system was talking about. It was talking about heavenly treasures or expensive items for cultivation. He decided to earn points as quickly as possible and therefore realized that he needed to go to the 18 mountains of Lianyun. There, he would do everything right. He was also bothered by the posture for devouring. It was uncomfortable, especially in battle. He asked what the name of the devouring hand would be in the system. It replied that he could obtain a devouring hand that would instantly absorb objects it touched, but there was a price. Ye Xuan stepped forward and said that it suited him. Then, approaching the window, he heard screams and decided there was a fight outside. He looked out the window. Lure was lying on the ground, and the women were yelling at her. They called her empty-headed and flighty, and besides that, an insignificant servant from the Ye family. The woman added that her master wished to use Lure, and that she had to agree to everything. Ye Xuan began to call the girl, but the maid just looked fearfully at the screaming woman. The woman said that Lure only seduced good men, and that she should be ashamed. She promised to tear her face to pieces, so that no stupid thoughts would even enter her head. She wanted to kick Lure in the face, but then the girl moaned. The next second, she herself was kicked in the cheek. Ye Xuan himself came to her aid. Seeing this, Lure began to shout at the young master not to get angry and that she was fine. Ye Xuan continued to beat the woman who dared to offend his maid. He was furious. He just turned around and looked affectionately at the girl. Ye Xuan told Lure that he would always be with her, and she had nothing to fear. Lure looked at him with tears in her eyes and remained silent. Her cheeks were flushed with embarrassment. Then they heard the young man's voice. He said that he had recognized the most talented young man in Lianyungang. He was talking about the young Ye Xuan. He asked how it was that the young man was still alive. Ye Xuan recognized him as one of those who had eliminated his real copy. The young man was aggressive. He said that Ye's family was willing to spend a fortune on his treatment, but he could not be helped. He would remain a pitiful person without cultivation. Ye Xuan told Chen Song that he had stabbed him in the back that night, and today he was also mocking his maid, Lure. He threatened to kill him. The guy just laughed in response. He did not take the young master's words seriously. He looked at the guy and asked who could defeat him. He considered Ye Xuan a cripple and added that after their last battle, he had become a nobody and had no powers or abilities. Ye Xuan replied that it was not a battle, as it was more like a night ambush. They, together with Chen Feng, attacked him at the estate. Ye Xuan looked at Chen Feng and said that today he would pay for it. The guy smiled and replied that he was ready to fight him. He added that if Ye Xuan was so tired of living in this world, he would help him leave it. He ran towards him with his fists. However, Ye Xuan stood and looked at him with determination and seriousness. He was clearly not afraid of their fight. Chen Song swung at the young master and said that he would gladly and happily give him peace. He was about to strike his first blow. However, things did not go according to his plan. Suddenly, Ye Xuan sharply intercepted Chen Song's attack and squeezed his fist tightly with his palm. The pain was unbearable. Chen Song couldn't believe it. Ye Xuan used the Thunder Fist technique. It was a loud name for such a move. Chen Song tried with all his might to break free from Ye Xuan's grip, but Ye Xuan only squeezed his fist even tighter and began to twist the young man's arm. Chen Song realized that Ye Xuan had also used the dragon counterattack technique, which was surprising. He didn't know that the young master knew such things. It simply couldn't be, and he began to scream at the top of his lungs. He kept asking why Ye Xuan's cultivation was still with him, since everyone said the opposite. He howled in pain, and barely managed to escape Ye Xuan's grip. The young man began to scream that it hurt too much. Ye Xuan only replied that he wanted to thank him. After all, without their help, he would not have been reborn. The Ye family brought shame upon themselves by spreading false news about him. Ye Xuan looked at his opponent and asked what his last words would be. He advised him to prepare to say goodbye to life. Chen Song replied maliciously that he admitted that Ye Xuan had caught him well, but he did not believe that Ye Xuan would have the courage to destroy him. After all, after his death, a real battle would begin between the Yi clan and the Chen clan, and the Yi family was the weakest of the four great families. He added that most likely, the Ye family would not survive this confrontation. Ye Xuan knew this and remained silent. Chen Song added that no matter how close the Lin and Ye families were, they were unlikely to stand up for the Ye family, and then a battle between the three families would begin. In that case, the Wu family would not stand aside either, and they would side with the Chen family. Ye Xuan stood and pondered his words. He decided that such a confrontation would not benefit anyone, but with the help of the Devourer system, he could resolve everything himself in time. Ye Xuan thought that he would destroy the Chen family then, but for now, he would have to spare Song. At that moment, Chen Song lunged at him again, saying that he had let his guard down. He wanted to attack Ye Xuan again, but Ye Xuan noticed his sharp blade in time and dodged. He kicked the weapon out of his hands. The blade bounced to the side and stuck into the floor right next to the woman who had recently mocked Lure. She screamed in shock. Chen Song didn't understand how this had happened and looked at Ye Xuan in fear. Ye Xuan looked at the young man and said that he was right, and that it wasn't worth killing him now. He added that despite this, he would still repay the young man for everything he had already done. With a sharp movement of his leg, he kicked Chen Song hard in the back, knocking him to the floor. Before he could recover from the blow, Ye Xuan decided to continue his attack and ran again towards his fallen enemy. He practically fell on top of him from behind, and while Chen Song screamed in pain, Ye Xuan hit him hard several times. The guy jumped up and roared in pain. Ye Xuan kicked him again. He knew that he was physically better prepared than Chen Song, and even had several new martial arts techniques. The guy fell to the floor with a thud, not even having time to defend himself in any way. Seeing that his opponent had finally learned his lesson, Ye Xuan looked at him with a satisfied expression. Then he walked over to Chen Song, who was trembling with pain, and, poking him in the side, said that he would like to say something else to him before leaving. He said that he would not fall for the same trick twice, so all tricks were useless with him. Ye Xuan sat down next to Lure and asked the girl if she was all right. She replied that everything was fine, and that only the bruise hurt a little. The people around watched everything that was happening with surprise. There was a man in the crowd who thought that Mr. Ye Xuan had indeed recovered. He decided that he had to report this to the head of the family. Later, a local doctor was invited to the Chen estate. He examined the patient and felt his pulse. The head of the Chen family, Chen Xiang, stood next to him and asked how his loved one was feeling. The doctor turned to him and replied that the bones in his arms had almost healed, and that in a month the young man would be able to move them. However, there was a downside. With such injuries, the path to martial arts was now closed to him. Brother Chen Song shouted at the doctor that this was outrageous. He did not want to listen. They decided that he was now crippled. The doctor replied that not only his brother's hands, but also his meridians would never fully recover, and the fact that he would be able to move like a normal person was already lucky. With the help of a magical herb called Bloody Jade, this could be remedied. If the patient wanted it, his meridians could be restored. However, this herb cost a fortune. The brother started yelling that Ye Xuan was a scoundrel, and now, because of him, his brother Chen Song would have to live like a normal person. The head of the family said that the herb could be found in the 18 mountains of Lanyun. It had always grown there and was abundant. He immediately sent his brother Feng there to find the herb. However, he advised him not to go deep into the forest. He turned to Chen Yu and told him to take a couple of guys with him and catch Mr. Ye Xuan for him. He wanted to deal with him personally. He was ready to carry out the chief's order. He also wanted to teach the enemy a lesson. The chief turned away and added that it seemed it was time to talk to the Wu family. It was time to finish off the Ye family for good. At that time, Ye Xuan was in the forest somewhere near the 18 mountains of Lianyun City. He came here to find the necessary valuable items for the Devourer system. And then he heard a roar behind him. Ye Xuan turned sharply and saw a wild boar. The monster was about to attack the young master from behind. Ye Xuan jumped up sharply, leaving the monster boar growling discontentedly on the ground. Their battle began. At that moment, his servant, a young girl named Luer, opened the window of the inn and wished for only one thing, that her master would return home safely. She remembered how she had begged him to take her with him on his short journey, but he was adamant. He did not take her with him, and only replied to Luer that everything would be fine, and, so that the girl would not worry about him, added that his cultivation was with him again. He told her that he had to become stronger as quickly as possible. The Chen family was definitely looking for him, so it would be better if Luer stayed safe. After all, they definitely wanted to find him and take revenge for Chen's song. Luer replied to the young master that he didn't need to worry about her. She smiled. She added that he should be careful too. The battle between Ye Xuan and the boar continued in the woods. It was a little dangerous. At one point, Ye Xuan barely managed to dodge the monster's sharp fang. It ran close enough to him. The wild boar was a second-level demon beast in terms of strength and abilities. It was quite powerful. Its speed was not great, but it was agile and cunning. The boar rushed towards Ye Xuan again to attack the man, but Ye Xuan was ready and waiting for the boar. He said that the monster didn't even know how fast he was. He just wanted to test something. When the boar was close to him, Ye Xuan jumped up to it and quickly grabbed its fur, climbing on top of it like a horse. Ye Xuan rode the demonic boar through the forests of Lianyun. He held on tightly to its neck. After a while, Ye Xuan decided to try something else and used his new skill on the boar. He pulled out a piece of its fur. The demonic beast howled ferociously and lost its balance. After a while, Ye Xuan was able to kill it and stood over its body. He was glad that he had encountered a second-level beast at the entrance to the forest. He thought that he should be extremely careful from now on. Then another thought occurred to him. Since he had dealt with the boar so easily, then third-level beasts would not be a big problem for him. He moved away from the boar and immediately turned around. Ye Xuan thought for a moment. He remembered that the Devourer system could consume anything, including the bodies of demonic beasts. He decided to test it out. He was hungry anyway, and his stomach was growling. Ye Xuan sat down in front of the demon boar's body. He decided it was worth the risk. After all, he hadn't been afraid to try the vase, and this was just game. He opened his mouth. Choosing what he thought was the right position, he waited. After a while, the boar really did start to shrink in size. Soon, Ye Xuan was able to swallow it. It went straight into his mouth. The system was working correctly. After swallowing it, the system displayed information that Ye Xuan had earned 20 spiritual power points for this demonic beast. He was glad that the system had not let him down. He decided that he could simply exterminate the local beasts and level up in the blink of an eye. Ye Xuan began hunting. He defeated a second-level demonic beast. It was a black panther. The system gave him 20 points of spiritual power. The next beast was third level. It was a fanged wolf, which gave him 30 points of spiritual power. The next demonic beast he defeated was also third level. It turned out to be a spotted wolf, and so Ye Xuan hunted and absorbed until late at night. Sitting by the fire, Ye Xuan estimated that, at this rate, he would reach the middle of the 5th level of martial arts in 2 days. There were 10 levels in total. Each level increased his striking power by 45 kilograms. Taking into account his techniques, his striking power was now about 272 kilograms. This meant that any creature below the 4th level would instantly disappear from a single blow. Ye Xuan was so full that he couldn't eat any more today. It was time to go to bed. He decided that it would be safer in a tree. Spotting a suitable tree, he jumped up and extinguished the fire. He leaned against the trunk and thought that was enough for today. He needed to rest properly. Just as he settled down comfortably, he heard a strange noise at the foot of the tree. He opened his eyes and became alert. Uninvited guests had arrived. He didn't understand yet and was just wondering who it could be. Ye Xuan listened to a rustling sound on the ground. He peered into the darkness of the forest. Something was moving toward him, and then he saw it. It was a demonic snake, but not just any low-level snake. The guest turned out to be a third-level white phosphorus python. It was not a bad catch for him. However, the snake was unusual. Ye Xuan looked at it. It was a snake that glowed in the dark, but he thought it was a little too big. The young master decided that it didn't matter now. Since it had come to him on its own, it would be a sin to refuse. Ye Xuan took out his blade, deciding that it would come in handy. And so his next hunt in the forest began. He looked at the blade and decided that, overall, it was a useful thing. Much cooler than that stupid universal bag. Ye Xuan swung it with all his might and jumped off the tree toward the snake. He prepared to attack. Hitting the snake's scales, the weapon bounced off it like a stone, without even touching the python an inch. The snake rose, rustling its scales. Its mouth opened wide, and its fangs were right above Ye Xuan's head. Ye Xuan was puzzled that the python had such strong scales that he couldn't break through them with one blow. The phosphorus python coiled like a spring and hissed with its mouth wide open. It had been hit after all, as confirmed by the pool of blood. While Ye Xuan was thinking about what was happening, the python turned its body and began to crawl into the depths of the thicket. Ye Xuan called out to it, but it disappeared. It looked like it was running away. The young master was left with nothing. Then he remembered the black stripe on its back. Come to think of it, this phosphorus python was different from the others. Ye Xuan wondered if it could be a demonic beast that had eaten a heavenly treasure and mutated. If so, he would definitely defeat it. He followed its trail into the depths of the forest. Finally, Ye Xuan saw a stone hole in front of him that looked like a large burrow, and decided that it was most likely the snake's lair. There was also a chance that the treasure that had changed him so much was still inside, and then it would be a great stroke of luck for the young master. Ye Xuan was very pleased with this assumption. His journey was becoming more and more fruitful with every passing minute. He entered the stone cave. Looking around in all directions, Ye Xuan did not notice anyone at first. Walking deeper into the cave, he saw a lake with a stone island in the center, of which were glowing precious crystals. Ye Xuan did not know exactly what was in front of him, but he decided that this was the heavenly treasure. Since it had allowed a third-level beast to advance to the fourth level, it was clearly powerful, and he wanted to take it for himself. Ye Xuan began to slowly approach the treasure in order to take possession of it and apply his absorption system. When he reached the treasure, he picked up the largest crystal, hoping to get devourer points for it. He was so absorbed in this crystal that he didn't hear the water in the lake suddenly bubble and the head of a python appear from it. He leaped up like lightning, even destroying stone. He was huge in size, and judging by all appearances, quite strong and level. Ye Xuan fell from surprise and dropped the crystal from his hands. The appearance of the python was too unexpected. It was not the one that was in the forest. One detail about this python caught Ye Xuan's attention. This specimen had a gold line on its scales instead of a black one. It was about the same size as the blue snake from the forest, only there, it was black. The python twisted and turned and went underground. Ye Xuan decided that this was silly until he felt a hiss behind him. Turning around sharply, he saw it right next to him. The snake jumped out of the lake and lunged at Ye Xuan. Then he saw that its line was black, like the python in the forest. It turned out there were two of them here. He knew that this task would be more difficult. He didn't have enough strength to fight two beasts and needed to recharge. Ye Xuan decided to use the crystal. He brought it to his mouth and began to absorb it. The system showed 100%. He saw a record that Ye Xuan had absorbed one concentrated obsidian nugget. Ye Xuan felt a pleasant energy spreading through his body. He received the coveted devourer points. The system reported that he now had a spiritual power of plus 1,500, and that he had reached the 5th level of martial arts. Now both snakes joined forces and began to attack him, but he was already ready to repel their attacks. After all, he now had the 5th level of martial arts, and he would now unleash his power on these snakes. He concentrated his energy on the tip of his sword. He did not wait too long for the snake to approach, and, swinging his sword, attacked the black-striped python first. This time, his blow was much stronger, and he was able to pierce its scales. He severed its head from its body with a single swing of his blade. Next, a golden snake jumped out of the lake. The young master saw that the black-striped snake had been defeated, so his eyes filled with rage. With a menacing hiss, he began to crawl toward Ye Xuan. Ye Xuan had already noticed him, but waited for him to get closer. Ye Xuan decided that if he had defeated a 3rd-level python with a black stripe, he would quickly finish off this snake as well. Its mouth with a poisonous sting was very close when Ye Xuan decided that the time had come. He jumped several times and found himself on top of the snake, immediately trying to wound it with his blade. But the attempt was in vain. Then, jumping to the side, he decided to try directly from above, and, gathering all his energy in flight, swung his sword at it. This also did not cause any damage. Ye Xuan realized that he was facing a very strong snake. After all, even his 5th level was not enough to defeat this creature. At first, he could not figure out what to do next. As much as he wanted to defeat it now, he would probably have to abandon this idea for the time being. He lacked the sword skills, otherwise, he would have been able to deal with this snake. Then Ye Xuan suddenly remembered that he had just received devourer points, which meant he could invest them in combat techniques. He turned to the system and asked it to open the list of martial arts techniques and find something of the 5th level. Among other martial arts techniques in its list, the system showed the wind blade technique. He decided that this was exactly what he needed right now. Ye Xuan told the system that he wanted to spend his earned points on the wind blade technique. The system reported that everything had been spent, and the exchange was successful. It announced that he had now mastered this technique. Ye Xuan felt streams of energy flowing through him, filling him with something new. He tried to wound the snake and succeeded. Surprisingly, he had only just learned the technique and immediately mastered it perfectly. The snake on which he had just tried to use the new technique became enraged by this. It lunged at Yi Xuan, but his training had not been in vain, and he was on his guard here too. He was able to strike the enemy several times with his blade. The snake also realized that it was facing a strong opponent. They stood face to face, each ready for the next battle. Ye Xuan felt tired. As he had thought, the 5th level technique consumed too much of his qi energy. He also realized that at his current level of cultivation, he would only be able to use it a couple of times at most. The snake was becoming more and more aggressive. He had to finish off the snake quickly, and he knew how to do it. He gripped the blade in his hand with such force that he gathered all his qi and prepared for a lightning-fast, powerful attack. Ye Xuan wanted to put all that energy into one strike, which is what he did. Swinging his blade, he attacked the snake. He succeeded. He pierced the snake's torso and cut it into pieces. The demonic beast was finally defeated by him. Yi Xuan exhaled. Although it was originally just a simple 5th level monster, it was quite difficult to finish it off. It was more difficult than 6th level monster. He realized that if it weren't for his 5th level combat technique, he would not have survived. Sitting next to the snake's body, he couldn't imagine how to eat it because there was too much of it. He thought that a devouring hand would come in handy here. He asked the system if he could learn the devouring hand. The system replied that it would cost 3 points. The exchange was successful. Ye Xuan reached out his hand toward the snake's body with the desire to devour it, and his hand felt as if it were burning. The snake's body disappeared very quickly. The system explained that he had devoured a 5th level mutated demonic beast and received 300 points of spiritual power for it. Looking at the devouring hand, Ye Xuan noted that it wasn't bad at all. The 3 points spent were worth it. He no longer needed his mouth, and thank God for that. He decided that he had spent too much time with these snakes. It was already dawn. He had to eat the second one and leave. He stretched out his devouring hand towards it. The system confirmed that he had eaten a 4th level mutated demonic beast. He earned another 100 spiritual power points. He had only spent a day here, and his cultivation had grown so much. The sun was high in the sky when Ye Xuan left the cave. He decided that the most important thing was that he had earned devourer points. His assumption had been correct, that only expensive things like heavenly materials and treasures gave devourer points. He set off. It was time to return. He remembered his maid and decided that Lure was probably very worried about him. Having gone far enough into the forest, Ye Xuan heard a strange sound. Looking closely, he saw his blade glowing brightly from a distance. This meant only one thing. The next second, he was already lying on the ground, and a huge demonic leopard was standing next to him. He saw pink stones on the beast's neck, and couldn't believe his eyes, still doubting what he saw. Did he imagine it, or were there crystals hanging on the neck of this 4th level leopard, chasing the wind? He wondered who would have so much extra money. Just think, hanging a crystal worth $1 million on the neck of a beast. While he was pondering this, the leopard disappeared like the wind into the depths of the forest. Ye Xuan shook his head in all directions and listened, but still couldn't figure out where it had gone. But he heard voices coming from the bushes. Creeping closer, he saw a man and a girl in a cloak. The man was treating the girl roughly, demanding that she give him the blood jade grass. He threatened her not to anger him, or else it would be worse. The girl said she wasn't afraid, and asked him if he had the skills to back up his words. The man nervously called her a scoundrel, and then Yi Xuan recognized him as Chen Feng. He was one of the brothers who had attacked him at the estate. Ye Xuan didn't understand what this scoundrel wanted here. He decided that he had come looking for him. Chen Feng wouldn't calm down, and shouted that he would destroy the girl. Then she would be more compliant. He jumped up with a sword in his hand to strike. The girl did not stand still. She also jumped up, ready to repel his attacks. Chen Feng, watching all this, decided to use the Thunder Fist technique. He had mastered it perfectly, but he met resistance from this seemingly fragile girl. His fist slammed into her palm. Gathering all her strength and abilities, she tried to resist him. A small explosion thundered from the collision of their energies. The forces were unequal. Chen Feng's blows still reached their target, and the girl realized that she was wounded after all. Falling to the ground, she was barely breathing. She lost the cloak she had been hiding behind in the fight. And then Ye Xuan recognized her as Shui Qingqing, the daughter of Spi He, the richest man in the city of Wanjin, and an old friend of his former host. Chen Feng raised his sword above her and told her to say hello to the spirits, as he intended to finish her off right then and there. Seeing all this, Yi Xuan realized that things were going badly, and that he had to rescue his acquaintance from trouble. He broke a branch in his hiding place to scare off his opponent with the sound. Chen Feng missed, distracted by the sound. Chen Feng turned his head and shouted angrily, "Who's there?" He was angry that he had been prevented from delivering the final blow. From behind the tree, he heard the sarcastic words that this was to be expected from a young gentleman from the Chen family. Ye Xuan continued and said that he now saw that the young man would stop at nothing and was behaving so disgustingly towards the poor girl. The next moment, he was already next to Qingqing. She immediately recognized the young master. Chen Feng also recognized Ye Xuan and thought that he was following him. Ye Xuan had never considered him smart, and now he was once again convinced of this. He replied to Chen Feng that he already had a lot to do without wasting time on this. He asked Qingqing if she was hurt and what she was doing in these mountains. He was interested in where her father and her guards were. She assured him that she was fine, but she was worried about him because she thought he was only at the beginning of the 4th level of martial arts. She told Zhuan to run away, and she would delay Chen Feng, since his martial arts level was below the 5th level. Even together, they would not be able to defeat him. Yixuan asked if she knew he was so strong. Why did she still decide to fight him? But she did not know this until they exchanged blows. Zhuan assured Qingqing that he was already far beyond the beginning of the 4th level, and that she shouldn't worry about him so much now. The young master surprised her greatly. She exclaimed that she hadn't noticed when he had already advanced to the 5th level of martial arts. After all, when they last saw each other just a year ago, he was at the beginning of the 4th level, and now he was already at the 5th. She admired him. She said that he was a natural genius, and that she demanded that he protect her honor. Qingqing turned to Chen Feng, pointing her finger at him. Yixuan agreed, and replied that she could calmly watch as he destroyed the enemy for her sake. Chen Feng, hearing this conversation, was extremely surprised at how he would do it, because in their last battle, he had fallen, and he hadn't even really tried, but so be it. He would let him feel the power of the Chen family's Thunderblade technique on his own skin. He added that Chen Feng would pay for his brother's broken arm. Ye Xuan was calm and wished him luck. He would need it. Taking his blade, he began to form a spatial ring, gathering qi energy in it. Chen Feng saw what Xuan was doing and was very surprised, but at the same time, he saw a double benefit in eliminating Yi Xuan now. They quickly ran towards each other and prepared for battle. Brother Chen Song was happy for the chance to avenge his clan. Within a minute, their sharp blades met and crossed. It was close combat. Ye Xuan was determined and ready for battle, as was the enraged and embittered Chen Feng. He shouted and was about to strike Yi Xuan, but Yi Xuan quickly dodged. Chen Feng couldn't believe what he saw. It was impossible. He didn't know that Ye Xuan's cultivation and skills had become even better than his, and he had surpassed him in skill and strength. Yi Xuan just glanced at Chen Feng and replied that he could thank his brother for such a level and rebirth. Chen Feng replied viciously that he knew it all along. That night, he should have not wounded Yi Xuan, but completely decapitated him. He just laughed in response to such sarcasm, and added that it was too late to regret it. What's done is done. And in order to repay him for this service, Ye Xuan promised to eliminate him with just 3 sword strokes. Chen Feng jumped up from his seat and shouted that he was ready to teach the boastful bastard a lesson. He ran at Ye Xuan with his sword in his hand, jumped up to him, and used his Thunderblade technique. Ye Xuan looked at his opponent seriously and calmly. He knew that his opponent had no chance in their fight. Gripping his sharp blade tightly, he prepared to repel Chen Feng's attack. Swinging his sword, he used his Stormblade swing technique. Everything began to spin like a whirlpool. Ye Xuan continued to spin the vortex and streams of energy, which grew stronger and stronger. However, when the fog and dust cleared, Ye Xuan did not understand what was happening. Nothing had happened to Chen Feng. He was disappointed. Ye Xuan believed that the technique was capable of destroying the enemy, not just raising clouds of dust. Chen Feng replied that he did not understand anything. He had taken on the Thunderblade technique, but nothing had happened to Ye Xuan. He remained completely unharmed. Ye Xuan replied that the technique he had just used was only at the 5th level of martial arts. Yi Xuan smiled and added that he could teach Chen Feng if he wanted. All he had to do was fall at his feet and beg. Chen Feng started shouting that he despised the entire Ye family, but he thought to himself that he was in a bad situation. He did not yet have that level of martial arts skill, and could lose to Ye Xuan. He could not understand where Ye Xuan had acquired 5th level techniques. Ye Xuan said that politeness was apparently too difficult a quality for Chen Feng, and that he could become his godfather for spiritual growth. Chen Feng looked at the girl. She was close to him, and he decided that he would have to take her hostage. He rushed towards her. The girl was frightened, seeing what was about to happen. Yi Xuan noticed this and understood everything. He couldn't let her get hurt. He quickly changed his glasses to the system's 5th-level storm steps. He was faster than Chen Feng after the Devourer system notified him that the exchange was successful and he had received the new lightning step skill. In a split second, he was right in front of Chen Feng, who was still running after the girl, and delivered his devastating blow. Chen Feng didn't even have time to understand what was happening. A second later, he fell to the ground, unable to breathe. The girl saw his blade flash right in front of her face. She thought it was the end for her. However, turning around and noticing this, Yi Xuan managed to save her. He grabbed her by the shoulders, and they both fell to the grass. A minute later, the girl was already shouting impatiently for Ye Xuan to get off her. She felt awkward, so did he. He apologized for his position, saying that it happened naturally when they fell. He himself only heard how pleasant she smelled. The girl got up, and as a token of gratitude, took out a bottle of potion. She said that if it weren't for Xuan, she would have been doomed. She threw the glass bottle into Yi Xuan's hands. He asked if she was sure she wanted to give him this herb. He knew it was very expensive. It was jade herb. However, she replied that she didn't care. The important thing was that she was alive. Her father was the richest man in Wanjing, and they had plenty of this herb. Yi Xuan took the bottle and thanked her. He asked what she needed in the 18 mountains of Lanyun. She replied that she wanted to go to the Leiyun sect. Her father had strictly forbidden her to do so, but she decided to sneak there and got lost. Ye Xuan replied that in that case, she should be glad that she had met him. He suggested that the girl return to Lanyun first. He added that he and Luer had not seen each other for a whole year, and he thought he should treat them to a good dinner at their establishment, the Drunken Immortal. She replied that this was wonderful, because she was already very hungry, and would like to try fried lotus seeds with fish. An hour later, they approached the city. At the entrance, Ye Xuan was met by a man who shouted that he was glad to have finally found him. He hurried Xuan along and said that he needed to go to the estate, and quickly. Someone had severely beaten little Luer. Ye Xuan asked who would do such a thing. It was reckless and brazen. The man replied that someone from the Chen family had done it. He took some men and went to look for Yi Xuan. When they found out that the master was not there, they came and beat Luer. The news that Ye Xuan had crippled Chen Song reached the Ye family. The head of the clan sent his dog, and they found Lu. Now she is back at the estate. However, her condition is critical, and it may be over for her. Ye Xuan shook the man's shoulders and asked what exactly was wrong with her. The man replied that the doctor who examined her said that her organs had been destroyed by a stream of evil energy. She would most likely not live to see the evening. Yi Xuan understood how serious the situation was and rushed toward his estate, cursing. He couldn't understand how enemies could attack an ordinary person. As he ran, he kept thinking that he hadn't fully assessed the situation and had underestimated the malice of the city's residents. He ran decisively into the courtyard of the Ye estate. There, at the head of the bed with Luer, sat a woman. She was caring for the girl as best she could. He ran into the room and told the woman that she could leave for now. She stood up, bowed to the young master, and said she was leaving. Yi Xuan waited until the door closed behind her and approached the bed where the sick Liu was lying. The girl looked very bad. She was unconscious and seemed to be in great pain. Yi Xuan told the system to exchange the Devourer's glasses for the dew he had collected from the flowers. The system replied that it had made the exchange, and a clear liquid appeared in the bottle. Ye Xuan took it and opened it. He gently lifted Luer and gave the girl this dew collected from hundreds of flowers to drink. It was a special powerful potion. It neutralized all kinds of poisons and healed other injuries. It also worked as a painkiller and accelerated recovery. It was the best treatment for people whose cultivation level was no higher than the 9th. Yi Xuan looked at Luer. The dew was clearly beginning to take effect on her body. The young master decided that he was lucky to have earned so many points in the Lanyun Mountains. Otherwise, he would not have been able to save Luer. Footsteps were heard, and men entered the estate with their leader. The young master went out to meet them. The chief asked Ye Xuan how his maid was feeling now. Ye Xuan replied that he had given her a legendary potion. It worked in all 18 mountains of Lanyun City. He said that after a good rest and sleep, the girl would be fine. She would recover. The chief replied that he was glad to hear it, and that he had seen how Ye Xuan had quickly regained his cultivation. They all noticed that he had become much stronger. Ye Xuan smiled and proudly declared that this was true, and that he had already reached the middle of the 5th level. The head said that it seemed that something good had happened to the young master in the 18 mountains of Lianyun. The bald man next to him added that he regretted his past conversation, and that if he hadn't tried to pressure Yi Xuan back then, Yi Xuan wouldn't have left his estate, and everything would have been fine with Luer. They all said it was their fault. They hoped for only one thing, that Ye Xuan would let the past remain in the past and return to the Ye family estate. That Ye Xuan would let the past remain in the past and return to the Ye family estate. Ye Xuan replied that he did not blame them for what had happened to Liu. He understood that they were only concerned about the well-being of the Ye family. He added that it was his lack of restraint that was to blame for how things had turned out. He had been thinking about something else. Zhuan decided that he would need a huge amount of resources to activate the system. He had to enlist the clan's full support. Yi Xuan looked at them and said that the blood of the Yi family flowed in his veins and that he would defend its honor until his dying breath. He decided to meet them halfway. He thought that if they admitted their mistake, then he was doing the right thing. They replied that it was excellent. They began to talk about what a good person Xuan was. They also said that an intelligent person would not cause a scandal. Then they heard Yi Xuan say that he had 2 conditions. They turned to him and waited for him to speak. The head said that if he agreed to return to their clan, he would do anything for him. Ye Xuan said that he wanted their enemy clan, the Chen family, to be completely wiped out as a result of their struggle. That was the first condition. They all stood in the courtyard of the young master's estate and looked at him with surprise and shock at what they had heard. The head replied that if they were to officially declare war on the Chen clan, the Wu family would also join the battle. Ye Xuan replied that he had already finished off the eldest son of the Chen family, and that his body lay in the Lanyun Mountains. This news shocked the head and all the members of the Ye family delegation. It was like a bolt from the blue for all of them. The head thought for a moment and said that it seemed that battle was now inevitable, but they needed a good plan. He looked at Zhuan and said that this was not the place. He suggested that everyone go to the main hall to hide from the eyes of outsiders. Everyone proceeded there. In the hall, everyone took their seats, and Yi Xuan stood before them. It was time to develop and discuss a plan of action. The leader said that judging by the fact that Xuan had brought up the destruction of the Chen clan, he already had some ideas. He suggested that Xuan share them. Zhuan replied that this was indeed the case, but that part of his plan was his second condition. The head listened carefully to what he had to say. Yi Xuan said that he wanted all the heavenly and earthly treasures stored in the Yi family's treasury. The head stood up and shouted that this would not happen. They belonged to all members of the Ye family. If Ye Xuan took them, the clan would have no future. Then he calmed down a little and said that there was one more thing. Ye Xuan simply would not be able to use them all. The young master only thought to himself that the head of the Ye clan did not yet fully trust him. He decided that he would have to resort to trickery. He looked at him and replied that they should not be angry with him. He calmly began to tell everyone present that he had met someone in the Lanyun Mountains. It was an eccentric hermit who had helped him restore his dantian. Yi Xuan said that it was this hermit who told him that he had a rare body structure. It is called devouring. Because of it, Xuan can absorb any treasures and receive spiritual power in exchange for them. Yi Xuan told the chief that he had now learned how to use this power, and thanks to it, he had not only restored his cultivation, but also reached the 5th level. He also possessed martial arts skills. The chief asked how this could be understood and what devouring meant. He had never heard of such a thing before. The bald man said that hearing all this, it seemed to him that the young master was simply trying to deceive them all in order to obtain the treasures. Ye Xuan saw all their doubts and said that he could understand them. However, he firmly told them that he was ready to demonstrate his powers to them. The head sat in his seat and replied that he would like to know how many items Ye Xuan needed to reach the next level. Ye Xuan estimated and said that he needed about 900,000 resources. The clan head said that this was too much for half a level. These resources were needed by the young disciples of the Ye family for cultivation. They couldn't afford it. Ye Xuan himself wouldn't allow it. He wasn't asking for these resources for free. He would contribute 2 5th-level techniques to the Ye family's scrolls. This would definitely make the family stronger. The head of the family was certainly interested, but there was no proof that Ye Xuan would do so. He suggested leaving them with one technique for now, and when they tested it, he would receive the resources. Then he would give them the second one. Ye Xuan was ready to give both of them at once. He said they could bring ink and paper, and he would write everything down. When they brought him the writing supplies, he began to write with lightning-fast attacking steps. It took him a little time to describe the technique. When he finished, he handed it to the head of the Ye family. The head began to read the names of the fighting techniques. These were the Storm Blade technique and the lightning-fast attacking step technique. He asked if these were the techniques that the hermit in the mountains had taught him. He thought that the disciples of the Yi family could learn them. Yi Xuan confirmed his words. For the hermit, they were nothing more than a pathetic toy, and Yi Xuan said that he would not be upset if the disciples of the Yi family used them. The lightning attack step was an amazing technique. The head was delighted, and felt that with this technique, he would become 3 times stronger and be able to deal with Chen Yu. This was convenient because they were all on the verge of battle, so the stronger the Yi family was, the better it would be for them. He added that he would pass these scrolls on to the disciples. He told his assistant to go to the treasury and bring Xuan 900,000 resources, as well as to give him a badge, as the status of the senior heir of the family. The assistant promised to take care of it soon, but he himself could not tear himself away from the scroll describing martial arts. The head added that he forbade them to disclose any information about Yi Xuan's unique body and the techniques he had brought with him. If he found out that the information had leaked outside this hall, everyone would be held responsible. All family members swore to be as silent as the grave. Ye Xuan saw that there was nothing more to do here, and told them to bring all the treasures to his room. Tomorrow, his level would already be higher. Tomorrow, he would show them his new powers. Let that convince them of his seriousness. After that, he promised to reveal his plan. The head of the family summed up the conversation by saying, "So be it." Then he suggested that Ye Xuan rest in his room, as he must be tired from riding through the mountains. The head of the family believed that heaven was on the side of the Ye family, and that Ye Xuan was a blessing sent to them by God. He laughed. The head decided that now he would be stronger and more powerful than the heads of other clans, and their young master would help him in this. Early in the morning, when the birds began to sing with the first rays of the sun, the Yi family's estate was bustling with activity. The treasury servant hurried the porters who were carrying heavy chests, because the young master was waiting for the treasures. He said that they should not keep the young master waiting, otherwise they would be in trouble. He was clearly on edge. They finally brought the young master the items he wanted. Ye Xuan ordered them to bring them inside. The porters carried the chest into the room, placed it on the floor, bowed low, and took their leave. Ye Xuan sat at the table and enjoyed his morning tea. When he noticed that the third steward was leaving after the porters, the treasury servant also wanted to leave quickly, as he was afraid of meeting Ye Xuan and his anger over their previous conversations. But Ye Xuan, remembering their previous meeting, told him to stay, calling him a pig-faced man with big ears. Stammering slightly from fear, the servant stammered that he could be of service to the young master. Ye Xuan approached him, saying that a few days ago, the third steward had been so bold and cruel. The steward lowered his gaze and began to stammer that it was just a misunderstanding, but he thought to himself that it was the end for him. It seemed that the young gentleman had taken offense. He had already decided that he would have to resort to begging and crying to the young gentleman, and he began to wail fearfully that he begged forgiveness and that he deserved to be executed. He should not have behaved so disrespectfully toward the young gentleman. He begged forgiveness for the sake of all the gods. He sincerely begged for mercy. Ye Xuan did not understand why he was so frightened, because he had not even threatened him. He sat there, showing everyone who was in charge now. He told the servant that it seemed he was truly repentant. He would give him another chance. The servant joyfully thanked Ye Xuan for forgiving him, and asked how he could be of service. Ye Xuan already had a plan for him, and had thought everything through in advance. He needed someone like him right now. He wanted the servant to use his connections to find out everything he could about Chen's son. The third steward asked fearfully if he had understood correctly. He was to find out about Chen's son. Ye Xuan's expression frightened him to death. He said it was nothing complicated. His aunt's niece's son worked for the Chen family. He would ask him for help. Ye Xuan didn't care how he did it. He just wanted him to keep in mind that the residents shouldn't find out about it. The steward confirmed that the young master didn't need to worry about that. He would be as silent as the grave. Ye Xuan let him go, warning him that if he completed the task, he would even receive the respect he deserved. The servant bowed and hurried to the exit with great pleasure. He did not want to stay there any longer. Ye Xuan could not wait to open the treasure chest. Closing the door, he quickly opened it. There were many gold coins inside. He was delighted to see such enormous wealth, as now he would be able to improve his martial arts skills. He put his hand into the pile of gold coins and gave himself the command to devour. The system was activated. All the coins from the chest instantly merged and flowed into Ye Xuan's body like a golden stream. Streams of energy swirled around him like a whirlwind, filling him with power. The system reported that the absorption was successful. He had reached the 6th level of martial arts. Ye Xuan felt that each level increase was a huge boost. He felt that both his body and his spiritual power had reached new heights. He was bursting with powerful energy. If he met Chen Feng now, he would finish him off with a single blow. Day turned into night. In the morning, Ye Xuan stood in front of the monument, among the members of the Yi family. The head of the Yi family brought him here to demonstrate martial arts. There were 10 levels of martial arts. With each level, the power of the strike increased by 100 kilograms. This monument was designed for the 6th level. The head said that if Xuan broke it with one strike, without resorting to technique, it would mean that he had reached the 6th level. Yi Xuan still hadn't gathered all the energy he needed. He knew it would take some time. He stretched out his arm, ready to strike, and tried to put all his strength into it, but it worked. With one swing, he smashed the monument, sending pieces flying in all directions. The head of the Ye family made sure that Ye Xuan had reached the 6th level of martial arts. The family members were delighted with what they saw. He was 15 years old and had already reached the 6th level. Even in the sect of the Severed Cloud, he would be considered a genius. They would definitely help him. The head said that ordinary people would have to work for months and years to move from one stage to another, but Xuan had passed half the level in one night. Yixuan was even embarrassed by such praise. If he had known that it had taken him only 5 minutes, his jaw would have dropped. The head asked Xuan what his plan was. He replied that in exchange for resources, he would teach them his techniques. This would make the family much stronger in combat. Xuan said seriously that with the help of resources, he would become even stronger, and then he would be able to destroy the Chen family in the coming war. The members of the Ye family listened to his plan, and agreed that the idea was not bad, but that the remaining resources would not be enough to take him to the 7th level. Ye Xuan had thought everything through, and said that they could sell the combat techniques to the Lin family, and use the money to buy a lot of materials for cultivation. In his memory, he could clearly see the fire. The estate was ablaze, and the entire Chen clan was wiped off the face of the earth. The head of the Ye family agreed that this was not a bad option, and said that he believed this was the right thing to do. From that moment on, the plan for the future great battle between the clans was sealed in the courtyard of the Ye family estate. Ye Xuan was ready to record the techniques in scrolls, which he did. He asked the system to purchase 5th level techniques. These included techniques such as the Storm Bow, Bull's Strength, Demon Bear's Paw, 5 Lightning Strikes, Meteor Sword Technique, and Tiger's Roar. The system announced that the exchange had been successful. 9 Devourer points were spent on all of this. All the techniques were transferred to his use. He barely had time to put their descriptions on paper. So, that night, he recorded all the 5th level martial arts techniques, one after another. When the members of the Ye clan began to read their descriptions, they realized that they were worth a lot of money. The 5th level technique, Tiger Roar, would cost at least 500,000. The head of the Ye family believed that with these techniques, they would be able to deal with the Chen family. He told Xuan to wait a little longer. He added that he would personally check the remaining resources in the treasury and send everything to him. Yi Xuan counted on the members of the Yi clan and their support. The next morning, as Xuan went to the backyard of the Yi estate where Liu was, he quietly opened the door to her room. Xuan saw that she was already sitting up in bed. He quickly went over to her and asked why she had gotten up when she had only just regained consciousness. It would be better for her to rest. Liu raised her beautiful, trusting eyes to Ye Xuan. The girl was still weak, but she felt much better. The next second, she threw herself into his arms. She had thought she would no longer be able to serve him. Ye Xuan began to scold her for getting out of bed before she had regained her strength, and for the thoughts that had crossed her mind. He added that he would never abandon her. The young master kindly offered to bring her something to eat, as she must have been hungry after 2 days of illness and suffering. Looking at her master, Liu wanted him to stay with her for a little while longer. She understood that he had saved her. Sister Qingqing had already gone to get food. Ye Xuan was upset when he heard this. He didn't understand where she had gone. They had enough food after all. Liu told him that she had said she knew a restaurant that served food that would speed up recovery. He called her silly and said that Qingqing probably just wanted something tasty and could have told him directly. Just then, someone knocked on the door, and one of the servants reported that a letter had been delivered to the young master, a personal and very urgent one. Ye Xuan allowed the man to enter the room and took the letter from him and began to read it. His eyes widened in fear at the text. Someone had written that if he wanted to save this girl, he had to come to the forest, located 5 kilometers north of Lianyun. Just below that was a note saying that if he came with someone else, they would have to cut off her hands. The servant had not yet left, and Yi Xuan asked him who had delivered the letter. The man said that the person had simply dropped it and run away. Ye Xuan realized that the man knew nothing and let him go. Liu looked questioningly at the young master. She asked him what had happened. Xuan knew that she must not get upset. She had not yet recovered, so he decided to lie to her, saying that the foolish Qingqing had forgotten to take the money. Now she was asking Ye Xuan to help her out. He added that Liu needed to rest, and that food would be brought to her right there. A quarter of an hour later, Ye Xuan was already in the forest, located 5 kilometers north of Lianyun. He was sitting in ambush and noticed 3 people in the clearing. Ye Xuan climbed down and moved closer. He realized that the girl was being guarded by 2 guards. She was sitting on her knees. It was definitely her. He looked closely and noticed that she looked very sad. It seemed like she was thinking about something. Then, Yi Xuan noticed 5 more people in another tree. The rest of the soldiers were hiding in the distance. He realized that it was an ambush. That was what he had thought from the beginning. They were trying to use her to lure him into a trap. And then he saw another one. It was none other than a member of the Chen clan himself, Chen Qiang. He was standing there, watching everyone closely. Ye Xuan didn't understand one thing. Why did he suddenly need to take Qingqing hostage? He decided that the rumors that he had killed Chen Feng had reached them, and now they had set up an ambush for Ye Xuan. They were all waiting for him and wanted revenge. The young master needed a reliable plan. He knew that if he just tried to break in, Qingqing would be in danger. And then he suddenly came up with an idea. It was quite feasible. He asked his system for a medium-quality black iron bow. The price of such a weapon was 2 devourer points, and he successfully made the exchange. Ye Xuan took the bow he received from the system and pulled the string to deliver his first surprise attack on his enemies. The arrow flew straight towards where Qingqing and her 2 guards were sitting. It was a little dangerous. All 3 noticed the sharp arrow rushing towards them. It all happened in a flash. Drops of blood appeared on Qingqing's face. Thank God. Ye Xuan did not miss, and did not even hit the girl, but her guards fell to the ground lifeless. A member of the Chen family shouted that he realized Ye Xuan was there. He was angry after seeing that the trap had not worked quite as they had planned. Ye Xuan's arrows had actually freed his captive, and he saw how quickly the young master of the Ye clan had appeared near Qingqing. He began to shout that he hated him, and immediately ordered all his men to come out of ambush. He yelled at them not to let Ye Xuan and Qingqing get away, and to hold them back. The warriors jumped out from behind the trees. They took out their weapons and literally surrounded Ye Xuan and the girl he had rescued. The young master saw all this. He assessed the situation and, throwing his bow on the ground, said he was not surprised by this. In his opinion, all members of the Chen family were capable only of such despicable and dishonorable tactics as this ambush. He took out his sword. The surprised soldiers of the Chen clan surrounding them realized that he was drawing a spatial ring with his weapon. It was amazing to everyone. Ye Xuan cut the ropes that bound Qingqing, and she tenderly told him that she was glad he had finally come for her and saved her. Chen Qiang told Ye Xuan that if he gave them his spatial ring and 5th-level combat techniques now, he would forgive him for his brother's death. He added that in that case, he would even let him and the girl go. Ye Xuan just thought about the fact that he didn't know that he possessed combat techniques, and also that he was the one who killed his brother. And then it occurred to him that there was a spy in his Ye clan. He turned around and saw Qingqing's face. The girl was happy and humming something. She could only prevent Ye Xuan from defeating his enemies. He decided that it was worth pretending to agree. Later, he would have the opportunity to deal with everyone. He decided that he would go along with it so that he could destroy them all at once later. He looked at the surprised Qingqing and ordered her to run, saying that he would take care of everything himself. The girl said that she would never run away. After all, Ye Xuan had come to save her, and she couldn't just leave him here with the enemies. Ye Xuan replied that she would only get in his way now. If she was caught again, it would be the end for all of them. He asked her once more to listen to his request. Their conversation was interrupted by the nervous brother Chen Song, who kept asking what Ye Xuan had decided. The young master turned to him and replied that he wanted to be sure that they would keep their promise and let them go. Chen Qiang replied that this was a matter of course. He was not called that for nothing, and he always kept his word and his promises. Ye Xuan decided that it would be great if this turned out to be true. He told him that he agreed to these terms. Chen Qiang called one of his men and ordered him to quickly finish the deal with Ye Xuan. The man ran up to the young master and, holding out his hand, told him to give everything up quickly. At that moment, Ye Xuan shouted that he should catch it and threw his weapon at it. The ring flew straight at the warrior from the Chen clan. He couldn't even utter a single word. A strange and frightened expression froze on his face. His body fell to the ground, cut in two. Chen Qiang shouted at Ye Xuan that he was an insolent man who was probably tired of living. He said that now he would take everything he wanted from him when he was done with him. He immediately ordered all his men to attack Ye Xuan at once. The warriors of the Chen clan raised their weapons and prepared for battle. While Ye Xuan was fending off the attacks, he ordered Qingqing to run away as quickly as possible. She rushed towards the forest. She said she would bring help. Chen Qiang replied that the girl would not get far anyway, but first they would deal with the young master. His men understood their orders and rushed at Ye Xuan with their weapons. There were too many of them for him alone. Ye Xuan assessed the situation, and, activating the system, took his sword in his hand. He was ready for battle. Using one of his newly acquired techniques, he began to strike devastating blows at his enemies. They recoiled with cries and groans. Chen Xiang saw what was happening, and realized that this was how Ye Xuan had killed his brother. It was an amazing sight, but he didn't want to watch it. He wanted to take revenge on Ye Xuan. He ran straight at him. He shouted that when he also mastered such a technique, he would be able to compete with his older brother for the position of clan leader. He craved and loved power. Therefore, his desire to obtain the technique completely blinded him. At that moment, Ye Xuan was fighting one of the warriors of the Chen clan. At one point, he turned around and noticed Chen Xiang behind him. He shouted and prepared to attack, but Ye Xuan managed to jump to another place. Chen Xiang said that he could see how fast the guy was, and that it was most likely also one of the 5th level techniques. He said that the old man from the Ye clan had not lied. He ran towards Ye Xuan again, shouting at him to be brave and fight him instead of running away. Then the young master replied that he was ready for battle. He quickly drew his blade and jumped into the air to attack his enemy. He used the triple piercing thunderblade technique, and suddenly, not 1, but 3 sword tips were coming at Chen Xiang. He was shocked, and then there was an explosion. All the energy from the technique was eliminated. They were both thrown to the side. Ye Xuan looked at his opponent and said that he could see that he had quite strong claws. The latter only replied that he understood that Ye Xuan had indeed reached the 6th level of martial arts. And then a question arose in the young master's mind. He asked his enemy how he knew this, since it was supposed to be kept secret by the members of the Yi clan. But Chen Xiang did not want to continue small talk, and only shouted that he did not need to know. He used the fire technique again, and prepared to attack Ye Xuan. He rushed at the young master. He wanted only to send him to hell with his own hand. Ye Xuan realized that he was losing his balance and falling, but then he managed to hold on to his sword and sharply directed it towards his opponent. Ye Xuan managed to use his technique again, and Chen Xiang's eyes reflected fear and panic. Ye Xuan's blade cut his chest, and bottles containing some kind of potion began to fall out. Chen Xiang watched in horror. Ye Xuan also understood that they could not be missed. They scattered to the sides of the falling vessels, and both grabbed one with their hands. Ye Xuan managed to grab a bottle with a bluish solution inside. He looked at it with interest. He said that it looked like a regeneration potion. He turned around and noticed Chen Xiang behind him. He told him that it seemed that he needed this potion now, which was why he had come with him to the fight. Chen Xiang silently looked at the young master, who simply took the bottle and hid it in the Devourer's dimension in his clothes. Seeing who was in front of him, Chen Xiang thought that it was not too late to simply hide from here, but he could not have imagined that there would be so many problems. He decided that without his second potion, he would definitely lose now, so he opened the bottle and drank the liquid. Ye Xuan saw what happened to him after that. He stood in the rays of red light, and his eyes turned bright red. It was clearly a potion that gave him some extra strength and abilities. Chen Xiang roared like a beast. Ye Xuan only had time to jump away from him as quickly as possible. He asked if it was really a potion for exploding his own chi. And then Chen Xiang ran up to him and shouted that this was it, and now he would finish off the insolent guy. It was a pill that changed a person's internal state and amount of chi energy. It temporarily made him stronger by 1, or, in extreme cases, 2 levels. Chen Xiang roared that even the heavens were on his side, and now his strength was comparable to the 7th level of martial arts. He rushed towards Ye Xuan, shouting that the time had come for the young master of the Yi clan to die. He pushed off the ground, and Ye Xuan noticed with horror how strong and agile he had become. He quickly grabbed his blade, and, using 6th level martial arts techniques, rushed into a counterattack. Creating a spatial ring and jumping up, Ye Xuan found himself higher than Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang looked fiercely at the young master, feeling only hatred and anger towards him and the entire Ye clan. But it was already too late for him, as Ye Xuan thought. He cut Chen Xiang into pieces. However, he was immediately surprised when Chen Xiang began to regenerate and return to his original form. Their battle continued, and took a more serious and dangerous turn for both of them. But Ye Xuan, not intending to give up, still understood that his level of martial arts was not enough for a quick victory over the enemy. He was just about to attack Chen Xiang when his hand, enveloped in some kind of fire and ash, literally grabbed the blade. It was astonishing, and Ye Xuan did not know what to do. Chen Xiang looked him in the eyes and told him that it was time to leave this life. He grabbed the young man by the chest with his fiery hand and literally began to incinerate him. Ye Xuan screamed in unbearable pain and felt a trickle of blood flowing from his mouth. For him, everything turned out to be disastrous. Chen Xiang pushed the young gentleman aside, and he fell to the ground, almost defeated. However, Ye Xuan began to use the spatial window again in midair, and took out the bow he had previously purchased from the system. He drew the bowstring right in the air, and prepared to shoot his arrow at his opponent. He was determined, and immediately launched a 5-star sphere attack. 5 arrows flew towards Chen Qiang. Seeing this, Chen Qiang just shouted that Ye Xuan had better obey and simply give him the spatial ring technique. He promised that in this case, he would grant Ye Xuan a quick and painless death, but then the arrows flew in. He had to fight them off, and, enraged by such insolence, Chen Qiang once again rushed towards Ye Xuan. He was close again, and his fiery fists struck the young master. Ye Xuan remained standing this time, and the fight continued. Turning to him, Chen Qiang began to shout that he hadn't even figured out what to do with the guy yet. He saw that Ye Xuan was already greatly weakened, and all that remained was to finish him off. But then, the young master remembered the pill. He opened the bottle and summoned the Devourer system. Exchanging the potion for points, he received 1,000 points of spiritual energy. Ye Xuan was thus able to reach the 6th level of martial arts. Now his chances of victory had increased. He had 6 more points, and Ye Xuan was glad that he was now at the same level as his enemy, and not lower. Now he just had to get close to Chen Qiang, so that he wouldn't have time to put up his defense. Then he could stun him with a tiger's roar. It was a new technique. After that, he would be able to knock him down with his 5th level martial arts sound technique. Chen Qiang was nearby. He asked Ye Xuan if he had decided how he wanted to die at his hands. Ye Xuan replied that he did not want to leave this life yet, and smiled. He added, looking Chen Qiang straight in the eye, that today there was a high probability that he would be the one to leave this world. He ran at him. Chen Qiang shouted that Ye Xuan was standing right in front of death, but still did not recognize it. He was burning with fire and roaring. A second later, they were both running at each other and ended up in close combat. Chen Qiang struck Ye Xuan. When the smoke cleared from the powerful explosion, he saw the young man lying face down on the ground, not moving. Chen Qiang approached his body, deciding that he was finally dead, and decided to take his technique. He crouched down and held out his palm to Ye Xuan. He said that the young man could be proud of himself, because he was the first to make Chen Qiang exert himself, and if they met again in a couple of years, Ye Xuan would most likely become the strongest in the city. Then, puzzled, he began to ask where the spatial ring was. He remembered how Ye Xuan used it to take out his sword and bow. The young master opened his eyes. He had only pretended to be dead. Ye Xuan's plan worked, and while Chen Qiang was unable to defend himself, he used the tiger roar technique. The enemy recoiled and fell to the ground. In the next few minutes, everything was decided for him. Ye Xuan did not hesitate and struck his blows. Qingqing ran through the forest as fast as she could. At one point, she heard a cry and a flock of birds flew up from the trees. The girl looked at the sky and decided that Ye Xuan was in big trouble. At that moment, Chen Qiang, sitting on the ground, asked the young master why he was still alive. He was sure that he had inflicted crushing and devastating damage on him. Ye Xuan replied that while he was spinning in the air, he had managed to drink a regeneration potion. It not only instantly healed all his wounds, but also restored his spiritual strength. He added that it was the best healing potion in the world. He took his sword out of his spatial ring and, pointing it at Chen Qiang, asked him how he had found out about all the internal affairs of the Ye clan. Chen Qiang just stared silently at his enemy, and everything happened quickly. Qingqing did not understand who had won. She suddenly heard someone's footsteps. The girl turned around and noticed a silhouette behind a tree. When he came closer, she realized it was Ye Xuan. He was alive. Qingqing was delighted and ran up to him. She asked if he was all right and where all the people were. He replied that he was fine and that the enemies were gone. He suggested that the girl return with him to the Yi clan's estate. She gladly agreed. After a while, they both found themselves in the backyard of the Yi clan's estate. The head of the clan was sitting at his desk in the stone hall, sorting through some papers. He heard a knock at the door and asked who it was. Ye Xuan was standing at the door. The man was glad to see him. He said that he had arrived just in time. He had finished copying the scrolls with the techniques, and suggested that Zhuan go to the Lin family immediately. Ye Xuan stood opposite him and asked what was so urgent about such matters. After all, it was the middle of the night. The head of the Yi clan could not give the young gentleman a clear answer. He realized that something was wrong. Ye Xuan looked him straight in the eye and firmly stated that he himself had killed Chen Qiang and his brother, as well as his men. The head of the Yi clan rushed over to Ye Xuan and asked him if he was all right and if he was injured. The news shocked him. Ye Xuan replied that he was fine. The head said that this was strange, because Chen Qiang was at the 6th level of martial arts. He was the 4th strongest in the entire Chen clan family, and if Ye Xuan managed to defeat him, it could only mean one thing. Ye Xuan replied that something unexpected had happened during the fight, and he himself had been able to reach the 6th level of martial arts. It was after that he was able to defeat him with the Tiger Roar technique. The head asked Xuan to sit down, and replied that he was very glad that he was okay. He asked why Ye Xuan had decided to eliminate Qian Qian after all. He suggested that their family members had learned of the death of Chen Feng's brother. Ye Xuan walked to the back of the room and sat down opposite the head. He replied that they had not learned anything yet. However, he now understood that there was a traitor in the ranks of the Ye clan. He looked sternly at the head. The head's legs buckled at this news, and he asked Ye Xuan if he knew who the spy was. The young master stated firmly and confidently that he knew, and that it was their chief elder. The clan leader asked how sure Ye Xuan was of this. He replied that he had to work hard to get the truth out of Chen Qiang. The elder had lost 20 million to the Chen family in bets. That's why he was being blackmailed, and he did what he did to save his own skin. The clan leader flew into a rage. He slammed his hand on the table, and even jumped up from his seat. He never expected their chief elder to be a gambling scoundrel. He shouted indignantly about how Chen Qiang dared to betray the family. The family head calmed down a little, and asked Ye Xuan if he knew anything else. Ye Xuan shared his thoughts. He said that according to Chen Qin, the Chen family had recently been trying to establish contact with the Wu family. Then he paused to think for a moment. Upon hearing about the contact, the clan leader assumed that the Chen and Wu families had joined forces. Ye Xuan immediately said that he had also thought about this, and that they should make a decision and use the time to get ahead. The clan leader supported him, saying that he was right, and that it would be better to go to the Lin family right away. They went to the Lin family, despite the late hour. The head of the Lin clan was a little confused by the visit of such late guests. It was unexpected, to say the least. Inviting them into the room, he was even glad to see his nephew in good health. So it was true that he had regained his strength. He had heard rumors that he had been able to restore his destroyed Dantian. Ye Xuan said that it was all thanks to the 2 pills he had been given earlier, and that he owed it to his uncle. Uncle Lin, realizing what was going on, decided to ask Ye Xuan if he was still upset that they had broken off their engagement. Ye Xuan assured him that this was not what he wanted to say now. He didn't understand. Ye Xuan said that he was truly grateful for everything. The head of the Lin family bowed his head guiltily, and said he apologized for how badly the Lin family had treated him. He added that he would order a couple of unmarried girls from the Lin family to be brought here right away. Ye Xuan would choose the one he liked. The young master liked this idea. He was a little embarrassed, but in a low voice, Ye Xuan asked Mr. Lin not to joke like that anymore. Ye Xuan thought about why he should choose. If anything, he would take them all at once. The head of the Ye family asked Lin not to joke with Ye Xuan. The head of the Ye clan said that they had both come here at such a late hour for a very important matter. He took out the scrolls describing the 5th level martial arts techniques that Ye Xuan had shared, and showed them. The head of the Lin clan looked at them and saw that they were 5th level techniques. He said that if he understood correctly, they were very good. The head of the Yi clan said that no one in the city knew about them yet. Lin looked seriously at the man and asked where the head of the Yi clan got them. The head of the Yi clan boasted that he had a whole bunch of 4th and 5th level techniques with full descriptions. He added that if Lin was interested in owning them, he would like to sell them to the Lin family. Lin was very happy about the opportunity to acquire all the techniques that were unknown in Lan Yuan. It was a great deal for everyone. The head of the Yi family confirmed his desire to sell them, but there was one condition. Lin immediately frowned because he wanted to own them as soon as possible, without any conditions. The clan head did not want gold as payment. He needed consumables for cultivation, which were natural gems, heavenly and earthly treasures of any level, and in unlimited quantities, as much as could be obtained overnight. He asked Lin if he agreed to these terms. Lin didn't think for a minute. It was easier than easy. He promised to gather everything quickly. Xuan saw that he had bought more than a dozen 5th level techniques without batting an eye. It seemed that the Lin family was rich, and much richer than the Ye family. The head of the Lin clan said that his servants were already gathering the items, and would soon deliver them to the head of the Ye clan. After dealing with this matter, the head of the Yi family said that now he wanted to talk about the reason they had come. Lin was surprised, and asked if the head of the Yi clan had come in the middle of the night not to sell the technician. He became curious about what he wanted to involve him in. The matter was serious, so the head of the Yi family got straight to the point. He had received confirmed information that the Chen and Wu families had joined forces. Late at night, the clan leaders had agreed on a matter that could not be delayed. Upon hearing about the alliance, Lin became very tense, so they had decided to form an alliance. The head of the Yi clan confirmed that this was indeed the case. They had joined forces to destroy the Yi family, and when the time came, it would be too late. Lin understood everything. He assured the head of the E clan not to worry. He would not wait humbly for the fall of the E family. The two clan leaders sealed their agreement with a strong handshake. Lin and E were now allies in this battle. Lin said that this was not up for discussion because they were brothers until the end of their days, in sickness and in health. Yixuan watched them and even enjoyed their behavior a little. It looked very heartfelt. The most important thing in clan battles was the fighting of their strongest representative. Lin said that the ruler of the city of Tian had the 8th level of martial art. His father could compare with him. Now he lives in seclusion, but they must not underestimate their enemies. When he returns, they will destroy the Wu and Chen families. The head of the Ye clan understood that, with his new techniques, Elder Lin would soon reach the 9th level. He cheerfully declared that he was congratulating him in advance. They would definitely help them in the joint battle. Mr. Lin gladly accepted these congratulations. He looked satisfied. Then there was a knock at the door. Lin turned to Brother E. It seemed that the resources for cultivation were ready. He would assign people to escort them home. He kept his promise. A carriage with treasures and materials, accompanied by guards, was waiting for them at the entrance. After finishing all the preparations, the heads said goodbye, wishing each other all the best. The head of the E clan said he hoped they would meet again soon. A carriage with valuable cargo drove along the deserted night streets of the city. Besides the guards, Yixuan and the head of the E family walked alongside it. The head of the E clan asked Yixuan if this would be enough for him to move on to the next level. Yixuan was satisfied. With a broad smile, he was convinced that this would be enough to take him to the 7th level of martial arts. At the same time, people in black moved almost silently and lightning fast across the roofs of the city's houses. The head told Ye Xuan that all this was certainly amazing. The boy was only 15 years old, and he had already reached the 7th level of martial arts. At some point, Ye Xuan suspected something. For some reason, the birds flew up, frightened by something. The head continued to say that if he ever decided to join the Lei Yun sect, their leader would take him as a disciple. He wanted to conclude by saying that when that happened, the status of the Ye family would rise. But he did not have time to finish because a black shadow darted from the roof. Yi Xuan saw the danger and managed to warn the head of the family. He had long since realized that they were being watched. He jumped in front of him with lightning speed, putting his hand forward. The fight between the young gentleman and the man in black began. Xu Yuan thought that this ambush might even be from the Lin family. He concentrated his energy, preparing to repel the attack. One of the attackers in black gave the command to attack to the others. He was not alone here. They began to jump down from the roofs of buildings. The first jumped onto the carriage. The next rushed after him. The head of the Ye clan saw Ye Xuan rush into battle with them, but he was worried because Ye Xuan was not yet at the required level. The combined attacks of two 6th-level warriors could be a problem even for someone in the middle of the 7th level. Yi Xuan was very fast, but these guys were also good. They jumped from place to place as if they were flying. They seemed to be working in pairs. Soon after their attack, the carriage's escort was completely eliminated. The head of the Ye family thought that things were bad, but he couldn't remember where he had seen this before. Then, in the movements of the ninjas who attacked them, he recognized the technique of the Wu family. It was a technique called the joint attack of the swimming fish. Yi Xuan once again barely dodged these guys in black. He was clearly not skilled enough to defeat them. He looked for the head of the family, who was now struggling to survive. Yi Xuan thought he had to deal with this as quickly as possible. Otherwise, the situation could take a different turn. He decided that it was not the work of the Lin family. They would have chosen a different moment to attack. He first decided to deal with one of the attackers. The guy in black wanted to strike. Ye Xuan tried to attack lightning fast, but the guy didn't even let him swing his arm. He blocked the attack. Jumping up, the opponent wanted to attack from above. His powerful lightning-fast blow almost caught Ye Xuan. He barely dodged it. And then, seeing what technique this guy was using, Ye Xuan understood everything. He had used the thunderclap fist technique. This technique was used by the Chen family. That meant this man was from there. Yi Xuan didn't think they would attack them so quickly. He immediately used his 7th level technique called Thunder Step and began to advance on his opponent. In another second, he was standing next to the man in black. The man had no chance of dodging the blow that Ye Xuan delivered. Ye Xuan decided that he had to find out who was hiding behind the black masks at all costs. One of the attackers realized Ye Xuan's intentions and ran away. He wanted to remain unknown. However, Ye Xuan sped up and did not let him get away, tearing the mask from his face. What a surprise it was when the mask came off and he realized who was in front of him. He did not want to believe his eye. He saw the face of the first elder of the Ye family clan. The man was stunned by the surprise and could not utter a word. While he stood frozen in confusion in front of the elder, another rival in black jumped off the roof behind him. Yixuan realized that he still had a long struggle ahead of him, and his strength was already depleted. He needed to replenish his energy immediately, and then he remembered something. He rushed to the carriage with the resources. One of his enemies caught up with him and threw Yixuan right into the carriage, which shattered into pieces. Yixuan barely got up, grabbing the chest with resources with his hand. And then he understood everything at once. He urgently needed the resources stored in the chest. He needed to raise his level immediately. Yixuan did not think long, and simply touched the chest with his hand and switched to the devouring technique. The system reported that the devouring was complete. He had reached the initial stage of the 7th level of martial arts. The system also reported that after devouring the resources, Yixuan had received 6 devourer points. At that moment, a man in black was already running towards him. But now, Yixuan could use the spatial ring. One of the attackers realized this and looked at the young warrior from the Ye family with surprise. His eyes expressed fear and even admiration. Standing right in front of him, Yixuan said affirmatively that this was so, and if he wanted to take it, let him try. He added that to do so, he would have to bow his head and acknowledge the superiority of the young master. The ninja replied that the kid was very conceited and ran towards him. Yixuan became seriously angry and decided that now he would show him who was boss. The man in black jumped at Yixuan, expecting that he was inexperienced and that he would quickly defeat him. But he was greatly mistaken, for Yixuan had already mastered the 7th level of martial arts. Using the Thunder Fist technique, he quickly repelled the attack, and immediately, he himself delivered the next blow with lightning speed. They were so close to each other that Yixuan simply thrust his hand into his enemy's chest. The man in black did not even realize what had happened. It was too fast. His heart was already in Yixuan's hands. The clan chief was stunned by what he saw, as were the elder and the other participants in the fight. They were all amazed by what they saw. Yixuan squeezed the heart in his fist and crushed it with a single squeeze. Drops of blood splattered on the elder's face. He and the others were horrified by what they saw. The elder screamed in fear and ran down the street. Yixuan saw this and said that he shouldn't even try to run away from justice. He used his speed tactic and in a second was right in front of the elder. There was nowhere for him to hide from Yixuan. Yixuan pushed off the ground with his hand and quickly swept the elder's legs out from under him. The elder lost his balance. He fell face down on the ground and already understood what awaited him. The people in black robes realized that they should not stay here any longer and rushed to escape. One of them shouted to everyone that the plans had changed. They retreated, leaving the elder lying on the ground. Seeing everyone flee across the rooftops, Yixuan just smiled and said that they would not succeed. They would not get away so easily. He used his spatial ring technique and requested his bow from it. Yixuan drew the bowstring. He said aloud that everyone would have to pay for everything. The arrows flew at the people on the roofs. They quickly hit their targets. People in black robes fell lifeless from the roofs to the ground. When it was all over, Yixuan approached one of the wounded men and uncovered his face. However, the man was already dead, and the young gentleman just looked at him in surprise. The head of the Ye family approached him, and seeing who was in front of them, said that it was indeed the elder Shuangzi from the Wu family. He was the one who led the attack. And then they heard someone moaning behind them. Yixuan turned around. He said that something had to be done about their senior elder. The head of the Yi clan approached him and asked why he had betrayed them. He said that they knew that he had lost a lot of money playing cards. The elder looked at the head in surprise and asked what debt he was talking about. He laughed and said that Ye Zhang was a great fool if he thought gambling was to blame for everything. Yixuan came closer and asked him what had happened then. The elder replied that the little bastard was also ridiculous. Then Yixuan thought for a moment and replied that he would try to guess. He looked seriously at the elder and added that it was all about power. The Chen family had apparently offered their elder the position of head of the Ye clan. The elder realized that the young man had guessed correctly. That was exactly what had happened. The head of the Ye family began to shout at him that he now understood what he wanted. The elder looked at them silently. Then he replied that this was exactly what he had asked for, and the Chen family had promised him that after this mission, he would become the head of the Yi family. He looked at Yixuan and asked how the young man had figured it out. The young man replied that it was written all over his face. They had lured him, so he had started this battle. He was just curious about what exactly had lured the elder. He asked him what else they could offer him besides money. He knew it was only power. In addition, Yixuan added that he had noticed how disrespectfully he had recently spoken to the clan leader. The answer was obvious. He grabbed the elder by the collar and said that all his desires and motives were terrible, and that now he would lose his tribute to Tian. The elder screamed in horror, telling Yixuan not to even think about doing anything to him. But Ye Xuan had already used his tactic. He struck the elder in the chest with his fingers. The elder howled in pain, and in a second, his spiritual energy was destroyed by Ye Xuan's powers. Ye Xuan thought to himself that it was this man who had complicated everything for him while he was trying to establish ties with the Ye family. He would not forgive him for this. The clan chief said that tomorrow he would judge the elder with the full severity of the Yi family's laws, together with the other clan members. The elder replied that he sincerely hoped so. Lying on the ground, the elder said that if he did not return, Chen would soon attack the Yi family. And then he did something unexpected. He applied his tactic and, deciding that it was all over for him, applied it to his forehead. He understood that he would no longer be the head of the Yi clan, which meant he had no reason to exist. Yi Xuan and the head were shocked by this, but could do nothing. Apparently, the Wu and Chen families had been preparing for something like this for a long time. This put the Yi family at a disadvantage. They had to catch them off guard before they gathered all their strength. The Yi family needed to unite with Lig and attack Chen that very night. The head said that until the old man Lin returned from his seclusion, they would have to wait and not attack the Wu family. He ordered Zhuan to contact the Lin family, while he himself would return to the estate and gather people. They agreed to meet near the Chen estate. Ye Xuan understood everything and quickly hurried to Lin. At that time, people were already making their way to the Chen family estate. The trained warriors quickly and quietly eliminated the guards of the house. It was not very difficult. Ye Xuan and his uncle from the Lin family stood on the porch and gave orders. In the backyard of the Chen estate, one of the family members was playing with his concubine. They asked him not to run away from them. The girls played tag with him, blindfolding him. He asked them to behave themselves and come to him on their own. Yi Xuan watched them. He was on the roof of one of the buildings in the backyard and immediately heard him say that one of the girls had finally been caught. He said that she had behaved badly, and now this bad girl would get what she deserved. He giggled along with the girl. She said that she allowed the young gentleman to joke with her like that. They were planning an intimate meeting. And then Ye Xuan, who was watching the young gentleman from the Chen family, took his bow out of his spatial ring. He smiled because he had calculated everything well and caught him off guard. At that moment, the guy was about to kiss the girl, but everything turned out differently than he had expected. Yi Xuan had already managed to draw his bowstring by that time. He shot an arrow at the young gentleman and hit his target. The young man lost his head right in front of the girl. Sitting in his blood, she began to tremble with fear. Everything happened so quickly and unexpectedly. When the shock subsided a little, she began to scream at the top of her lungs. From that moment on, everyone understood what was happening in the estate. The head of the Chen clan asked his man what had happened. The man was out of breath as he ran to the chief. After catching his breath a little, he said he had bad news. He reported that the Ye and Lin families had joined forces and attacked them. By this time, the courtyard was already full of the lifeless bodies of the Chen family warriors. They lay on the ground everywhere, in countless numbers. A bloody battle between the clans was raging. The man also reported to the head that most of their people were no longer alive, and they would not be able to hold out for long. The head began to shout that they were just a bunch of idiots. He ordered the remaining people to be gathered in the backyard. He added that they would all continue to fight alongside him. The man obeyed the order. The battle continued. That night was stained with blood. The bald man saw his men falling around him. They were eliminated one by the people of the Yi and Lin family. Then he noticed arrows and raised his head. Yu Xuan himself was sitting on the roof of the building, looking at him with a bow in his hand. He pulled the bowstring again and attacked. The arrow struck the man. Following him, he took out 3 more people next to him. Yu Xuan decided that he had enough skill to strike enemies on both the left and right. All he had to do was bend his bowstring slightly. He decided that once they had dealt with the Chen family, he would devour all their treasures. He would use the points he earned to improve his star arrow skill. The head of the Chen clan saw the head of the Ye clan and started shouting at Ye Chang, calling him an old fool. He wanted to attack him from behind and eliminate him, but Ye Chang turned to him and said that he had appeared just in time. Ye Chang ran straight towards the head of the Chen clan, and their forces and energies collided with each other. It was like an explosion. After a while, everything quieted down in the backyard of the Chen estate. The people of the Yi and Lin families surrounded the remaining warriors of the Chen family in a tight circle. Yi Xuan stood on a tree branch and watched what was happening, realizing that everything was finally settled and they had won. The Chen family was finished, and he jumped down from the tree to the ground. He decided that now was the perfect moment to raid their storehouse. The treasure chamber was nearby, and Ye Xuan eagerly headed toward the entrance to the storehouse to take all their resources. The young master thought to himself that he would take everything in the Chen clan's hidden treasure trove, and a minute later, he pushed open the doors to enter. When he went inside, he was stunned. The treasure trove was filled with chests and boxes of treasures. Ye Xuan's appetite was immediately whetted. Taking one of the boxes and opening it, he saw 30-year-old mountain ginseng inside. Taking the next one, he saw 50-year-old pearls. There were so many of them that no one could have imagined such a thing. Ye Xuan was very surprised. It was a little strange. After all, these were the most common and not rare medicines. The Chen family was the third largest in the city of Linyun. They couldn't be poorer than the Yi family. Ye Xuan decided that this couldn't be the case. That meant there was a secret room. He decided to find it no matter what. He continued his search. Ye Xuan thought to himself that it must be somewhere here, and in it were all the treasures of the Chen family. Finally, his search was successful. He pulled the handle of the candlestick, and the door opened. He found the storage room with what he needed. It was a well-hidden secret room. The Chen family had quite a lot of resources in its coffers. He immediately began to devour everything. This allowed him not only to reach the middle of the 7th level of martial arts, but also to awaken a rare, hereditary trait. When he left the treasure room, the system notified him of this. There were indeed a huge number of resources and treasures. With the help of the Devourer's system, Ye Xuan learned about the pedigree of hundreds of beasts. So far, his progress was only 1 point out of 100, but it was a start. The lineage of 100 beasts requires the consumption of the bloody essence of 107th rank demonic beasts to fully reveal itself. This would result in such progress that upon completion, it would incredibly increase the physical strength of its master. Ye Xuan pondered. Apparently, he would have to go to the Lanyun Mountains once again to hunt demonic beasts. But first, he had to deal with the Chen and Wu family. When he returned, he saw many dead bodies in the courtyard of the Yi family. The Ye family's warriors were gathered in front of the house. Zhuan asked the elder what had happened here. He told him that while they were attacking the Chen family had also taken advantage of the situation. They divided their men into 2 groups, and the second group attacked the Ye family and the Lin family at night. Old man. He gathered all the city guards. They surrounded the Chen estate. Ye Xuan asked how he knew this. The man replied that Wu Tian had just come and told them about it. He advised everyone to surrender. No one knows if he was telling the truth or not. Ye Xuan did not believe him. This old man often said absurd things, and the young master was very angry about the situation. He told his uncle that the Wu family was not attacking yet. As soon as they launched an attack on the Ye and Lin families, they would take the old people and children hostage. Then it would all be over. Ye Xuan suggested attacking first and sweeping them away with one strong attack. The head of the Ye clan said that they did not yet know what Wu Tian was planning. Attacking them right now was not only difficult, but also not the wisest move. After all, Wu Tian was at the 8th level of martial arts. The head believed that even the 5 of them together would not be able to defeat him. Not to mention that the Wu family had several people who had reached the 7th level, which also did not make their task any easier. After listening to his uncle, Ye Xuan said that he would take care of Wu Tian. He decided that he could definitely deal with him. This silenced everyone in shock. The head of the Ye family and the elders were extremely surprised by this decision. The head of the Ye clan even yelled at him not to make such foolish decisions. After all, he was the future of the Ye family. Ye Xuan reassured his uncle, saying that he would not rush into danger. He had already mastered several 7th level techniques and had reached the middle of the 7th level. Of course, he was not saying that he would easily defeat him, but he was not going to lose to him either. Meanwhile, they would have to deal with the warriors who had reached the 7th level of martial arts, and then they would help him with Wu Tian. After listening to him, the head of the Yi family could find no more arguments to stop Yi Xuan. He turned to everyone and said that he had decided to go along with it. He only advised Yi Xuan to be careful. Ye Xuan understood everything, and, having made this decision, now wanted to properly prepare for the upcoming battle. He took his bow and turned to the system to exchange his Devourer points for an upgrade called Star Arrow of Chaos. Everything sparkled and spun in the energy field that was created. The system gave the result. The exchange was successful. As a result, 20 Devourer points were spent. The Star Arrow of Chaos reached the 7th level. At the same time, the best warriors, led by the Elder himself, gathered in the courtyard of the Wu Tian family. The head of the Wu Tian clan decided to give a speech. It was intended for the Ye and Lin family. He said that they only had time until the incense burned out. After the allotted time had elapsed, they would all remember his words and pay for what they had done. Ye Xuan had already heard him. He was already in the backyard of the Wu Tian family and had chosen an observation point for himself. A minute later, in 2 lightning-fast jumps, he was already standing on the roof right in front of Wu Tian. Ye Xuan took out his bow. Now it was the Star Arrow of Chaos. Its fiery arrows aimed at the warriors of the Wu Tian family. The star arrow in Yi Xuan's hands was a formidable weapon. It gave him the opportunity to approach Wu Tian's level. Pulling the bowstring and aiming it at Wu Tian himself, he turned to him and said that he would fight him if he was brave enough. Ye Xuan released the bowstring and fired the arrows to show everyone his level. Wu Tian was angry to see that Ye Xuan was up to something again. He frowned, trying to figure out his tricks. The arrows fell in the courtyard, creating an endless field of fire. The head of the Wu clan also possessed certain techniques. Ye Xuan's main target was Wu Tian, so he shot an arrow at him. It almost reached its target, but was deflected by Wu Tian's power. Wu Tian caught the next arrow right in front of his face at the last second. He was the strongest warrior in his clan. However, he was unable to stop the rest of the arrows, and they flew into the children and warriors of Wu Tian's family. They fell, breathless. Wu Tian roared in rage and shouted at Ye Xuan for daring to attack his children in front of him. He said that Ye Xuan would pay for this 100-fold. Ye Xuan stood on the roof, taking up a comfortable position for attack and continuing to deal with his men. The arrows hit their targets with great accuracy, without missing a single one. But his main task was to provoke Wu Tian himself into a duel. The head of the Wu clan recognized the young man as the youngest master, and calling him by name, looked sternly and angrily into his eyes. Ye Xuan did not deny that it was him, and that he was from the Ye family. He replied that it was so, and this impressed Wu Tian. Ye Xuan told Wu Tian that if he still refused to fight him, he would continue to destroy the younger generation of the Wu family. Wu Tian was forced to admit that he was worthy of respect, having reached the 7th level of martial arts at such a young age. He rushed towards the building on whose roof Ye Xuan was standing. He said that he would help the boy end his life quickly. At the same time, the head of the Ye clan ordered his men to attack. A new battle between the clans began. The warriors on both sides attacked each other with fury and ferocity, delivering deadly blows. The head of the Ye family shouted at them to fight for the honor and dignity of the Ye clan. He led them forward. Ye Xuan saw the head of the Wu clan quickly approaching him. He fired a couple of arrows downward. Then, with a sharp jump, he leaped up from the roof. He was running away from his enemy. However, the head of the Wu clan possessed both speed and the necessary skill. He dodged Ye Xuan's arrows, and at some point caught up with him. He grabbed the young man by the chest with his fiery hand, and Ye Xuan felt a bright and unbearable pain in that spot. Ye Xuan looked down and saw the head of the Wu clan fighting with enemies from the Wu clan. It was not easy for him. The head of the Wu clan told Ye Xuan that he was a fool if he planned to help others while in his hand. He said that he would have to pay for everything. He began to shout furiously, gathering his fire and destruction technique, and in the next second, he attacked the young man. The young master felt pain in his chest from the blow and cried out. It was unlike anything he had ever felt before. A second later, he began to cough up blood. Ye Xuan realized that his strength was not enough. The head of the Wu clan grabbed him sharply by the hair on his head. He shouted that now he would finish off the young gentleman. He was about to strike him again, but everything changed. Something flew past his head and rolled across the ground. The head of the Wu clan was distracted, and Ye Xuan was able to jump aside. They both stood on the ground and looked to see what it was. Something rolled across the backyard of the estate. It was moving fast enough that it was impossible to see what it was right away. But then it stopped, and the head of the Wu clan and Ye Xuan himself could see that it was a severed human head. The head of the Wu clan began to cry with tears in his eyes. He couldn't believe his eyes. It was his father's head. He turned sharply and swung his fist, preparing to deliver a devastating blow to the enemy. Then he noticed that Ye Xuan was no longer there. Besides, when he looked up at the roof, he saw another warrior. It was Lin Shao himself. He had returned from his exile and decided to join the Lin clan in this fight. The head of the Wu clan cried out and asked if it was true that Lin Shao had killed his father. He thirsted for revenge. Lin Shao jumped down from the roof and calmly replied that he had done it. Lin Shao added that Wu had been a little unlucky. He had attacked the Lin estate just after Lin Shao himself had advanced to the next level of martial arts. If it had been an hour earlier, the members of the Wu family would have ruled the entire city by morning, but as it happened, he had only just reached the 9th level. Therefore, now neither his father, nor the head of the Wu clan himself, nor any of the other warriors, had any chance of success in this battle. The head of the Wu clan began to shout that he did not believe that Lin Shao had reached the 9th level of martial arts. It was impossible. His father said that at his age, it was very difficult to ascend to heaven and begin cultivation. Lin Shao replied that his father was right, and for that, he needed the guidance of the elders of Yu. He added that people of great power will always find a way to improve their level. Lin Shao asked the head of the Wu clan if he would surrender now. Then he would let him live, and he could pay for everything with only his tribute to Tian. The head of the Wu clan replied that he had no intention of surrendering. He ran straight at the enemy from the Lin family, shouting that one of them would die in battle today. 5 minutes later, there was a loud explosion, and rocks fell to the ground. This was the result of their battle. When the dust and smoke cleared a little, everyone saw someone's legs under the rubble. The man was no longer moving. The warriors of the Wu family realized that their leader had died. They looked at his body with shock and fear. The other participants in the battle, including the members of the Lin family, also turned around. Someone was clearly approaching them, and the head of the Ye clan took his attention away from the battle and began to watch closely. Even Ye Xuan himself, seeing everything that was happening, silently stared at the man. Everyone understood that it was Lin Xiao himself standing before them, and it was he who had killed the head of the Wu clan. Lin Xiao slowly approached the warriors and asked why they were silent. He looked at them all and asked what they would choose: to fight him and lose their martial arts skills, or simply die here and now. Everyone understood that they were no match for such a warrior. They would all die, and all the warriors began to shout that they surrendered. Lin Xiao was impressive. He was powerful, and seeing their fear, he just laughed. He said that in that case, they should leave immediately while he went in search of the Wu family's treasure. Later, when everything was settled, Ye Xuan returned to his estate to rest. He took a bath in the backyard and reflected on what had happened that night. He understood that although the system allowed him to quickly gain spiritual power, to move to the next level, and travel from one world to another, the transition of spiritual power into physical power still took too much time. He remembered the pain in his chest from the hands of the head of the Wu clan. The enemy's blow was too strong and hit its target, because Ye Xuan's body was not yet ready for it. The young master understood that if his body had been nourished by spiritual energy for years, then neither the force of the attack nor Wu Tian's blow itself would have reached him. And at the moment, his main weakness was precisely his physical strength. He decided that it was time for him to return to Lanyun at the age of 18, and there he would hunt 7th rank monsters. Suddenly, Qing ran into his room. She called out to Ye Xuan, and he blushed with embarrassment and covered himself. He told the girl that he was actually taking a bath. She replied, a little embarrassed, that she had nothing to be afraid of, and that she had come to see him on business. Qing came closer and laughed at the fact that Ye Xuan, despite being an adult, still washed himself with flower petals. Ye Xuan replied that it was none of her business. She turned away and said that he was boring. She even seemed a little upset. Qing said that she knew that the Wu and Chen clans no longer existed, and that she would like to be introduced to the sect of the Severed Cloud. Ye Xuan replied that she should wait a few more days. Qing didn't understand why she had to wait so long, and asked Ye Xuan what his plans were. She decided that he had other business to attend to. He replied that this was indeed the case, as he was going to return to the Lanyun Mountains. Qing had no idea about this. She remembered how things had ended for her last time, and asked Ye Xuan why he was going back there. He just sighed. He didn't want to explain his plans to her. He said he just had to cultivate. Qing was angry as she left. She started scolding Ye Xuan, saying that he was only interested in cultivation. She had spent so much time in his city, and he had never taken her anywhere. As she opened the door, she heard Ye Xuan tell her that it was true. It was true. He asked her not to go anywhere tomorrow, and added that the man her father had sent after her would arrive in the city. Qing turned around and started yelling at the young master. She couldn't believe what he had told her. That same night, she and Ye Xuan were already riding horses through the forest from the city. Qing hurried and kept urging her mare on. The young master followed the girl. Then Qing stopped and saw a quiet town with stable. She pulled on her reins. She suggested that Ye Xuan stop here for the night. Ye Xuan asked why the girl was in such a hurry to flee the city, and now she had suddenly decided to calm down. She replied that she was in a hurry because she was afraid that the men sent by her father were nearby. But now she believed that they were safe, and everything was fine. She added that, after all, she was a lady, and could not ride a horse all night. This confused Ye Xuan a little, and he decided not to argue with her. He only asked why she was trying so hard to avoid her father and his men. She snorted, and said that she was not going to tell him the whole truth. After all, it was he who had reported her to her father. She looked offended. They entered the inn, and the girl immediately told the owner that they needed 2 rooms upstairs. He replied that he would prepare everything. Several people were sitting at a table drinking tea. Qing, passing by them, greatly interested them. She climbed the stairs, and everyone noticed how attractive she was. One of the men smiled. He had clearly noticed Qing. When the hotel owner had everything ready, he told the guests that they could go to their rooms. Qingqing looked at Ye Xuan and saw that he was a little tense, so she told him that he should trust her. They would soon have an excellent dinner and rest. The young gentleman replied that he was grateful to her and looked at the man sitting at the table with tea in his hands. He understood that he was not here for no reason. As soon as they entered, he seemed suspicious to him. He checked everything and, unlike the other guys, this man had as high as the 7th level of martial arts. The others who accompanied him were only at the 5th level. It seemed that none of these people were from Lianyungang. Climbing the stairs after Qingqing, Ye Xuan thought that perhaps these were the people sent by the girl's uncle. Qingqing walked along, humming happily to herself. So Ye Xuan dismissed these thoughts and decided that there was something else going on. The girl looked very calm. Ye Xuan walked her to her room and said that he thought they should go to bed early because they had to get up early tomorrow. Qingqing sighed discontentedly and said she agreed. She was just teasing the boring Ye Xuan. The door to her room closed, and the girl went to bed, while Ye Xuan walked down the corridor, wondering what kind of character she had. Late at night, a dark male silhouette appeared in front of Qingqing's chambers. It was not Ye Xuan. It was the unknown man with 7th level martial arts skills who had noticed the young girl earlier. He listened to the sounds in the room, and after making sure it was quiet, opened the door to her bedroom. Once inside, he locked the door so that no one else could enter from outside. Qingqing was sleeping soundly in her bed and heard nothing. The man came very close to her. Suddenly, she sensed something, woke up, and started screaming. "Who's there?" She tried to kick the unknown man, but he quickly blocked her blow and, grabbing her by the ankle, replied that he could see she was a capable girl. Qingqing still managed to get out of his hands and ran to the door. She started screaming and calling for help. Ye Xuan. The man jumped up behind her, and without giving her a chance to say another word, knocked her out with a blow to the head. Qingqing fell, and a few minutes later, he had already wrapped her in a sheet. The man had kidnapped Qingqing. He opened the window and jumped down with her. Several people on horses were already waiting for him there. They rode away from the hotel. Ye Xuan had been watching them from the roof the whole time. As he had thought, this man was here for a reason. He didn't go to sleep in his room, but decided to find out what was going on. Now he had jumped from the roof to the ground to catch up with the kidnappers. He tried to follow them closely and keep up with them to find out where they were going. The road led them to Wanjinshan. Ye Xuan decided that even if these people were not sent by Uncle Shui himself, they were definitely connected to him somehow, and that everything would be fine with Qingqing. He didn't know why the girl wouldn't tell him anything about her family, but she refused to return to her hometown. He didn't know what was going on, but he decided that he would have to find out for himself, and perhaps these kidnappers would give him the answers. He looked at the nearest mountain and thought that he would definitely be able to intercept them if he crossed it first. At that moment, Qingqing's kidnappers continued to ride their horses along the road through the thick forest. None of them noticed the rope stretched between the bushes, and the man holding Qingqing realized with horror that he was falling. His horse stumbled over the rope, and he fell to the ground. He still held the girl tightly and carefully in his arms. Getting up from the ground and turning around, he realized that his men had suffered the same fate. They had fallen to the ground and were moaning from their injuries. Ye Xuan came out of his ambush in the bushes and asked them who they were and why they had kidnapped his girlfriend. One of the men approached the leader and said that this young gentleman was the same guy who had accompanied the girl at the inn. The leader looked at Ye Xuan and said that his intuition had not deceived him, and that it seemed that the young man was not so simple. A guy from his gang asked what their leader meant. He looked at Ye Xuan and decided that he was young and inexperienced. He was just starting to grow a beard. He added that he was far from being the leader. However, the leader snapped that he was an idiot, and that they had only managed to get 50 or 60 miles away from the inn. They were all on horseback, but this kid had overtaken them and set up an ambush. He was good at putting two and two together, unlike the other guy. The leader of the kidnappers looked seriously at Ye Xuan and asked him who he really was. But he didn't wait for an answer, and smiling, added that he didn't really care and that it didn't matter. He said that they didn't fight him at the inn because they didn't want him to get into trouble, and that it was better for him not to get involved. Ye Xuan looked at them with a bored expression, and then said that it was all nonsense, and that it seemed like they just didn't want to answer his question. He used his technique and said, rushing forward, that since that was the case, they would settle everything by force. The leader asked if the guy was tired of living. He put his hand forward and began to lift ice chips into the air. Ye Xuan knew that the fist of spreading ice was a 7th level martial art. The leader saw this and said to the man standing behind him that everything was correct. Such elements only exist in martial arts of the 7th level and above. The guy started yelling at Ye Xuan to run away from there and that he was probably afraid of them. He promised that they would not pursue him, But Ye Xuan replied that it was only the 7th level. It was easy for him. He looked at the 3 men and the leader, and said in a serious tone that he could do it too. He called up the system and asked it to exchange Devourer points for the Cloud Wind Palm technique. The system announced that the exchange had been successful, and 30 points had been spent. The guy next to the leader told Ye Xuan that he was embarrassing himself. After all, 7th level techniques were rare, and most people couldn't even comprehend them. Another man also laughed at Ye Xuan. He said that one glance was enough to see that the guy was from that backwater called Lanyun City. Then Ye Xuan used his new 7th level technique and told them all that in that case, they could all check it out for themselves. All 3 of the kidnappers couldn't believe their eyes. They couldn't imagine that a guy like that could do such a thing. One of the men started shouting that this young guy was really not joking with them, and that he possessed these techniques. A fiery whirlwind began to swirl right in front of the leader of the kidnappers. It was truly a powerful force. He stood and prepared to repel this attack with his icy rain. He lifted fragments of ice and snow above himself, showing his power. The 2 techniques collided, causing thunder and lightning and whirlwind currents. However, the leader soon realized that this wind technique was shattering his ice fragments to smithereens. It began to twist them into a single whirlwind, and all the members of his team watched this energy and power in shock. They understood that none of them could do anything against such a technique from the young master. Even the leader could not cope. The vortex began to approach them and knock them all off their feet. It carried them deep into its stream, and the men only screamed and called for help. Finally, after a few minutes, all 3 kidnappers were lying unconscious on the ground. They had been defeated. Ye Xuan approached one of them. He realized that his body was trembling with fear. He headed for the leader. He left, and the other 2 lay there, trying not to move so as not to provoke the warrior's anger. Ye Xuan approached the leader. The leader looked at the young man and said that he seemed to have completely underestimated him. Ye Xuan was interested in one question, and he asked the leader to answer why they had kidnapped Qingqing. However, the leader was not going to say a word to Ye Xuan. He said that it would be better for the young man to finish him off. Ye Xuan decided that since he couldn't get anything out of him, it was time to get him out of the way. With a fiery whirlwind, he cut down the leader. Ye Xuan still hadn't gotten the answer he wanted. Their leader turned out to be stubborn. He said he would have to turn to those lying motionless on the ground. It was interesting to see if they would be just as uncooperative. The gang members lying on the ground realized that he was coming towards them. They didn't know what to do or what would happen next, so they trembled with fear. Ye Xuan approached them and asked if they had already decided what they would say to him. The men didn't want to speak. One of them raised his head and asked if he was really going to kill him now. Ye Xuan leaned toward him and asked if he really wanted him to kill him. He continued that it would not be difficult for him and immediately began to activate his fire whirl skill. At that moment, the second warrior could not bear it anymore and shouted that he should not do it and rushed to cover the first one with his body. He blurted out that he stuttered. He turned to Ye Xuan and said that he seemed like a big man and must have a kind heart. The guy asked to let them go. Ye Xuan looked at this warrior and decided that he was trying to deceive him. At the hotel, he had been quite eloquent. The man immediately begged, saying that it was true. He just stuttered when he was very nervous. Ye Xuan was already tired of dealing with them. He didn't care which one of them explained what was going on. He stepped on the guy's shoulder with his foot, pinning him down. The guy took this as a good sign and asked him to promise not to touch him, and then he would tell him everything. Ye Xuan understood that they had some kind of relationship, since he was protecting the guy so much. Turning to his friend, he told him everything. A month ago, they had been sent by the head of the city of Wanjin. At that time, his son had accidentally stumbled upon Miss Qingqing Shui and fallen madly in love with her. The spoiled only son of the city's head immediately went to her father and proposed marriage. Lord Shui agreed. But a few days before the wedding ceremony, Miss Qingqing unexpectedly disappeared. A couple of days ago, rumors reached them that the missing Miss Qingqing was hiding in the home of the Ye family in Lianyun City. The city leader sent these people to bring her back and hold the promised wedding. They were looking for the girl. Ye Xuan remembered Qingqing's reaction when they met. She was a runaway bride. Now it was clear why she reacted that way to the news that her father had sent people. Ye Xuan turned to Qingqing, who was lying on the ground a short distance away. He realized that she was still fast asleep. How carefree she was. Ye Xuan continued his interrogation. He asked what the son of the city's leader looked like. What was his character and cultivation like? The guy shouted indignantly that the ruler's son was a rare piece of trash. He was lustful and had no respect. After a short pause, he said that he should not treat the people living in their city in such an inappropriate manner. At this point, his partner, who had been silent the whole time, jumped up and declared that Zhang Xiang was destroying people. The man apologized to Ye Xuan for his behavior. Now he would not remain silent. Not only did Zhang Xiang have a disgusting character, but all he did was eat, drink, and gamble. He is also incredibly ugly. He is extremely lustful and has 10 concubines. But in terms of cultivation, he is a natural genius. He is 22 years old and has already reached the middle of the 7th level of martial arts. He was even taken as a disciple into the Lixian sect. Ye Xuan found this interesting. These warriors told the young master everything they knew, and now Ye Xuan decided he could let them go. They looked at the young master with hope. Ye Xuan got all the information he needed, but he couldn't let them go. Qingqing was asleep and had a dream in which her father's voice told her nephew Ye that he was a man of honest destiny and indescribable nobility. The voices woke her up. Opening her eyes, she saw that she was in her bedroom. It was strange because the last thing she remembered was being kidnapped at the inn. She gradually woke up from the noise on the street, and her thoughts returned to her. She did not understand why she had woken up here. Then the girl heard her father's laughter and his voice. He was talking to someone, calling the guy terribly funny. Qingqing looked out the window and saw her father and Ye Xuan in the gazebo by the stream. It was a shock to her, and she rushed over to them indignantly. Qingqing's father asked Ye Xuan what he planned to do next. He didn't have time to answer. Ye Xuan turned his head at her voice and calmly said that he could see that Qingqing had woken up. He wanted to say something welcoming to her, but he couldn't finish his sentence. He was kicked by the girl. She shouted that he had betrayed her and looked angry. Her father tried to intervene in their argument. He told his daughter that Ye Xuan had actually saved her from her kidnappers. Qingqing stopped her attack. Her father told her that he had saved her from people hired by the city governor, and that if it weren't for Ye Xuan, she would definitely be in trouble. He asked his daughter not to run away anymore, but Qingqing replied that she had been forced to do so because it was her father who was forcing her to marry. All this time, Ye Xuan had been sitting with Qingqing's foot pressed against his chair. So now that the situation had been clarified, he asked her to remove it. Qingqing was so angry that she didn't even remember that her foot was still on Ye Xuan. She was embarrassed and began to apologize so that he wouldn't think anything bad about her. Her father didn't understand when he had forced her to marry. He told her that when Zhang proposed, he asked her opinion, and she agreed. After that, he accepted their wedding gift. Qingqing remembered that she had been too busy with the picnic that day to really listen. She didn't even know what she was agreeing to. Ye Xuan understood, because Qingqing was always like that. He didn't know if she ever thought about what she was doing. She nervously told her father, demonstratively folding her arms, that she didn't care. She was not going to get married. If he wanted to, he could marry her himself. Looking at his nephew, Ye's father laughed and said that it seemed he had spoiled his beloved Qingqing too much. He even found it amusing. He told his daughter that she could breathe easy. He had already ordered the wedding gift to be returned. Qingqing rushed to hug her father. She couldn't believe it and asked the old man if he was really her father. Why had he become so agreeable? At this wonderful, joyful moment of their conversation, a messenger appeared at the entrance to the garden with news that something terrible had happened. The city governor and his son had attacked them. He hurried to deliver the news to his master with his last ounce of strength. As soon as he finished speaking, he fell to the ground from a blow to the back. Ye Xuan tensed up. Standing next to him were his father and daughter, who were now apparently in danger. The father and son of the Zhang family appeared at the gate. The ruler's son yelled at the girl and kept asking how she dared to break off their engagement. Ye Xuan saw Zhang Xiang literally roll into the courtyard because he was a fat guy with short legs. The young gentleman looked at the two of them and thought about how different they were from each other. The son was terrible and not at all like his father. The governor of Wanzhen was a tall, manly man and quite handsome. Unlike him, his son was truly terrible. Those beady eyes, those teeth, that snake-like tongue. Better not to talk about him. At one point, Ye Xuan even entertained the thought that perhaps he was not his son at all. Qingqing's father turned to Mr. Zhang. He said that he thought it was too much to do such a thing on the Shu family estate. The young Zhang declared that their family owned all of Wanzhen. They could kill all of his minions and raze the place to the ground. Ye Xuan could no longer tolerate such insolence. He turned to the governor and said that it was actually his idea. The governor snorted and replied that his son could not stand people who did not trust him, and that he himself was afraid of him when he was angry. Then he gave him an order. Ye Xuan said that he believed that the most important things in marriage were love and mutual desire. Since Qingqing did not want to marry him, Why should they both suffer? The son of the ruler of the Zhang family looked at Ye Xuan with dissatisfaction. He did not know him at all. He said menacingly that now he understood everything, and guessed the reason why Qingqing had broken off their engagement. He decided that it was all because of Ye Xuan. He couldn't help but notice how handsome this young gentleman was. He ran towards Ye Xuan and told Qingqing to watch, as he personally tore her beloved to pieces. Qingqing and her father tried to dissuade the ruler and his son from using force. The girl only had time to shout to Ye Xuan to be careful. The young gentleman was not afraid of this crooked guy. He just smiled at the upcoming battle. In a second, he was able to get ahead of the son of the ruler of Wanjing and get behind him. He kicked him in the face, and the fat, awkward young man fell straight to the ground. Ye Xuan wanted to continue the fight, but then the city governor himself grabbed his son with a sharp throw and gently placed him on the ground. He was angry at Ye Xuan's action, and using his martial arts technique, clenched his fists. He looked at the young gentleman and said that he had dared to strike his son for no reason, and now he would pay for it with his life. Ye Xuan stood opposite the city governor and saw how huge and powerful the man's aura was. The young gentleman understood that he was no match for him yet, but he did not know what to do in this situation. Then the city governor suddenly turned around and asked the stranger who had come here and interrupted him. A dark silhouette of a man stood in the archway at the entrance to the backyard of the Shu estate. He heard the governor's voice and stepped forward. The governor looked at the stranger and began to question him about who he was and what he wanted. He was unhappy that he had been interrupted. The unknown man in the mask appeared unexpectedly and immediately began to say that the Shu family served the city of Lian. He added that he would advise the ruler to back down from his plans, as he had already attracted too much attention to himself. The ruler told the 9th-rank martial arts master that the Shui family had an ace up their sleeve, and he was unhappy about it. At this point, Qingqing's father intervened in the conversation and said that Mr. Zhang was just joking and that he had no other choice. All the men stood their ground, and the governor was clearly unhappy that they were defending the old man. He glared at Qingqing's father. He said that if he wanted to break off the engagement with his son, he would have to return 10 times the value of the wedding gift. This came as a shock to the father. He said that would be 500 million silver coins, and that such greed usually did not lead to good things. He said he would give 5 times as much. The So family agreed to pay that amount, and if Mr. Zhang was not satisfied, then they would have no choice but to fight. Ye Xuan thought to himself, as he listened to all this, that he was still too young, and did not even know that one could ask for so much for a wedding. The city governor replied to Qingqing's father that he would agree to a deal for 5 times the amount of the gift, plus 5 kilometers of land. He decided that he couldn't relax with this old man, and had to bargain to the end. Then his son started shouting that he also had one condition. He pointed to the young Ye Xuan and said that he wanted to fight him himself, in addition to everything else. Father Qingqing looked at Ye Xuan's confident expression and didn't know what to say. However, he thought that the boy could handle it. Ye Xuan himself beat him to the answer and told the city governor's son that he agreed to it. After all, he also wanted to teach him good manners. The governor's son started shouting that he thought this handsome guy was a coward, but he was glad that this was not the case, and he would be happy to beat him up. Ye Xuan replied that he would not be able to do that. He added that the young man was already over 20 years old and only had a 7th-rank martial arts skill. He said that he was no different from a stray dog, and that he had better stop wasting his spiritual energy in vain. The governor's son was angered by such sarcasm, and said that Ye Xuan was a coward, and that's what he wanted. He was ready for his attack. He immediately used his swift step technique, and in a second was next to the guy, grabbing his elbow with his hand. But he didn't notice one important detail right away. The governor's son was playing dirty in the fight. A minute later, Ye Xuan saw that the other guy had a weapon in his other hand, and had simply used a deceptive maneuver. He took out a shiny blade and swung at the young gentleman. Qingqing and her father also realized that this scoundrel had hidden his sword. The old man started yelling at his nephew to be careful. Ye Xuan used his swift footwork and instantly moved away from the melee. A minute later, he grabbed the ruler's son's sword-wielding hand with his palm. The latter was surprised by his speed. Ye Xuan's next move was to break the scoundrel's elbow. Lying on the ground, the scoundrel screamed in unbearable pain. His father, the city governor, could not believe what was happening. He could not have imagined that Ye Xuan would be able to defeat his son so quickly. He became angry, and everyone around him noticed the change in him. Zhang began to shout, gathering his strength, that Ye Xuan was cruel at such a young age. He rushed straight at him, saying that it would be better to rid the world in martial arts of his presence forever. The masked stranger understood that the situation had escalated, and he saw how quickly the city governor moved towards Ye Xuan. He decided that he could not allow such consequences to this situation, and interrupted the ruler's attack himself, putting his fist in front of him. He said that wounds were inevitable during a fight. He believed that the ruler should go and find a doctor for his son, right now, before it was too late. Otherwise, this injury could affect his future cultivation and martial arts. The governor gritted his teeth and stopped. He understood that this masked man was right. He looked at the young gentleman and asked his real name. He replied that his name was Ye Xuan. He was from the Ye family in Lianyun City. Ching began to ask why the ruler needed this information. She decided that he was going to take revenge on the young man. She added that Ye Xuan was also a disciple of the Split Cloud sect. Hearing this, Ye Xuan thought that the girl was only making things worse. The city ruler replied that it seemed that the Ye family had decided to climb a tall tree. He picked up his wounded son and, as he left, told the boy to pray that his luck would stay with him. The masked stranger waited until the ruler disappeared and suddenly asked if Guan Yulan was not a disciple of the Split Cloud sect. He thought that his memory was apparently failing him. Ching casually replied that she had completely forgotten that Uncle Lian was one of the sect's instructors, and that's why you can't fool him. She giggled, and her father just turned to Lian and said he was grateful for his help. Lian replied that he had done nothing of the sort. Ching's father said that this time they had come into direct conflict with the Zhang family. He regretted it. He knew that later it would surely come back to haunt their trading chamber. Lian told him not to worry. After all, his daughter had said that Ye Xuan was a disciple of the sect. If the Zhang family continued to believe this, then their family would be safe. Ching said she had said this because it was the first thing that came to mind. Uncle Lian replied that in that case, they should simply turn this lie into the truth. Ye Xuan asked what he was suggesting. Lian replied that the head of the sect was always traveling, so it was impossible to become his disciple. The same was true for his deputy. However, the deputy sometimes took on disciples if he considered them talented. If Xuan joined the sect and showed himself in the best light, he would accept him. Then he would truly become their disciple. Xuan replied that, in general, this was not difficult for him. He was going to go to them anyway. Father Ching said that this was excellent, because then he would be able to count on the young man. He would order the servants to prepare a table for him. They had something to celebrate. After a while, they had dinner. It was late at night, and Ye Xuan sat at the table with his uncle. Ye Xuan asked why he had come back so late. Father Ching replied that he was ready to talk to him frankly, because he and his father were close. Ye Xuan poured tea, and thought to himself that this was true, because his father had saved his uncle's life. Ching's father laughed, and added that he would like to know Ye Xuan's opinion of his daughter. The young gentleman thought for a moment, and then replied that she was a very good girl. She was innocent and sweet, a little wayward, but sincere. He himself wanted her to be a little more reliable. And then his uncle said that since that was the case, Ye Xuan should marry her. The young man was shocked by the proposal, and even spit out his tea. He replied to his uncle that it was not possible. She was like a sister to him, and he couldn't see her that way. He couldn't see her as a wife. Uncle just sighed sadly, and said that he was just trying to get rid of him as soon as possible. However, he added that he understood and accepted Ye Xuan's decision, and would not insist on it. But he remembered what the guy had done for them. After all, this time he not only saved Ching, but also helped the entire So family a lot. He couldn't forget that, so he would reward Ye Xuan. He ordered the servants to bring huge chests of riches into the hall. Ye Xuan's eyes lit up at the sight. His uncle said that cultivating martial arts requires a lot of resources, including auxiliary ones. He is giving all of this to the young master. Ye Xuan approached the huge number of chests filled with treasures and opened one of the boxes. He was surprised. Inside were black spiritual mushrooms. They had turned bloody. It was a valuable resource. He looked at the old man and told his uncle that he understood how expensive it all was. He wanted to say something else. However, his uncle stopped him with a gesture of his hand, saying that it was nothing to worry about. In his opinion, this was exactly what the young man needed. Ye Xuan knew that these black, bloody mushrooms were worth at least 50 million on the market, but his uncle spoke of them as if they were worthless trinkets. He decided that there was nothing to be gained from these rich people. His uncle looked at Ye Xuan and added that his Ching was lucky to have him. His father had raised an excellent son. Ye Xuan just looked at him and asked his uncle how well he knew his father. He replied that, in fact, not very well. His father was not very talkative. However, he always smiled when he was with his son. And if it weren't for him back then, only his bones would have remained. 4 years ago, he moved to Wanjing. His caravan was surrounded by bandits the moment they crossed the Lanyun Mountains. At the last moment, a man appeared with a child in one arm and a sword in the other. None of the bandits could match him. That man was Ye Xuan's father. The child was him. That's why every time he came to visit them, His uncle brought gifts for everyone. As time passed, their two families grew closer and closer. He smiled as he recalled the past. According to him, Ye Jiang most likely knew about Ye Xuan's father, and even more than his uncle did. He said that he could ask Ye Jiang about him. Ye Xuan replied that he himself did not particularly like to ask about his father, especially since Ye Jiang considered him long dead. His uncle said that could not be true. Yi Chong's cultivation was too great, and he definitely could not have died. Ye Xuan did not believe these words. He wanted to ask his uncle how great his father's power and cultivation had been. His uncle replied that he couldn't remember exactly, but that the bandits who had attacked him were rebels from the Xuanyang Empire. They said that their leader was a general, and that his cultivation had reached the middle of the world of true depth. That was amazing. They finished their conversation, and his uncle stood in the courtyard to say goodbye to his nephew. Ye Xuan added that his uncle should take care of himself. His uncle left. When the door slammed shut, Ye Xuan began to think about how there were 10 combat levels at the beginning. After that came true spirit, then true depth. A man who had passed through half the world of true depth could not resist his father. Lan Yun was still a backwater, but that was where his father came from. He was a natural talent, and his family, Ye, should be proud of him. However, Ye Jiang himself did not want to talk about him, and this bothered Ye Xuan. Then he looked at the treasures in the chest. He decided that his father had left him as a child for a reason. He activated devouring. His hand began to absorb resources, while Ye Xuan continued to ponder the reasons, and decided that perhaps it lay with his mother. The system said that he had successfully devoured the spiritual items, and received 160 devourer points. He also gained a level. Yi Xuan reached the 7th rank in martial arts. However, Yi Xuan was very disappointed with what he heard. He blamed the system for only giving him the 7th level for treasures worth 200 million. It was unthinkable. The next morning, he said goodbye to his uncle and Qingqing at the city gate and moved on. They wished him a safe journey. A man walking down the street didn't even realize who had just rushed past him so quickly. It was Ye Xuan, testing his new 7th rank skills. Ye Xuan used a new move. He decided that it was very cool. The shadow step was stronger than the swift step. He didn't expect anything less from 8th level martial arts. The steps were not only faster, but also looked cooler. Ye Xuan wanted to activate the blood of 100 beasts. He needed to catch and devour a 7th rank beast, and such beasts could be found in the mountains starting from the 10th. What a lucky coincidence. He could pass through the 10th mountain on his way to the sect of the Cleaved Cloud. It was convenient. On the way, he could hunt the animals he encountered. Here was a flaming tiger. The system immediately notified him of the activation of the blood of 100 beasts, 5 out of 100. The next prey was a stone turtle. The activation of the blood of 100 beasts, 20 out of 100, became 7 points out of 100. The bloodthirsty vine that Ye Xuan dealt with gave him the opportunity to increase his points to 69 out of 100 possible. He saw a crimson eagle. Its elimination gave him a lot of points. The system notified him that he had activated the blood of 199 beasts. The next beast he encountered was a white gorilla. It was huge. Ye Xuan estimated that this prey would give him a lot of points, but it would take some effort, and finally he finished with it. Ye Xuan was even a little tired. Yi Xuan didn't even think it would take a whole week. He spent enough time in the mountain. The young gentleman reached out his devourer's hand to the monkey to finally finish everything. And so it happened. As soon as he devoured it, he reached the required level. The hunt was over. The system notified him that he had reached level 100 out of 100, and immediately the activation began. Streams of energy flowed through his body, filling him with new strength and ability. He had wanted this for so long. It was as if threads of electricity were running through his entire body. Finally, everything calmed down, and Ye Xuan calmed down too. The sun was setting, and the young gentleman realized that he needed to find somewhere to stop for the night and rest. Ye Xuan found a cave where he decided to stay. He thought it was time to test the power in his fist. Clenching his fist, he struck a rock in the cave. The rock shook. His blow left an unimaginable dent. He was satisfied. His efforts had paid off in full. He had become several times stronger, faster, and more enduring than before. During his hunt, he had reached the peak of the 7th level of martial arts. Now, many would not be able to withstand his dozens of blows, even people in the middle of the 8th level of martial arts. And that's if he didn't use martial arts. Over the past week, Ye Xuan realized that his combat and recovery skills were not very good. He needed to fix this somehow. He thought about opening the low-level blood list and turned to the system. It suggested that low-level blood improves the physical performance of the carrier. This list included the blood of a sea beast. His carrier could move freely and breathe underwater. The blood of 100 colors improved the carrier's recovery and gave him immunity to all poison. Every night, his energy would be restored, namely, the energy of a dragon and the fury of a tiger. There was also the blood of a swordsman and the blood of an archer. The list went on, and everything had its price. But Ye Xuan was interested in the blood of 100 flowers. It was the only suitable low-level blood. The system showed that he had 410 points. It was just enough, and he happily ordered the blood of 100 flowers to be purchased. The exchange was successful. Although he was a little upset that he had spent 360 points, there was nothing he could do about it. Ye Xuan knew that he would earn more. He proceeded to activate this option. As soon as everything started working, he felt himself recovering. He saw how all kinds of small wounds began to heal quickly. In principle, he didn't expect anything less for that price. The sun was already rising. Ye Xuan hurried, because he had already stayed here too long. It was time to get to the sect of the Cleaved Cloud. He had covered a considerable distance when he finally saw the pagoda of the sect of the Cleaved Cloud, high up on the mountain below the clouds. The sun's rays illuminated it, giving it a fairy tale appearance. This was the location of one of the two largest sects in the Nanling region. Climbing the steps to the top, Ye Xuan was stopped by a young man who asked him why he had come here. The young man added that the disciples had already been accepted. Ye Xuan thought for a moment and replied that he would like to report on his previous studies. He didn't know what else to say. The young man added that it had already been 2 months since the recruitment, and he had only just arrived. He asked the young gentleman if he had any papers with him. He looked at Ye Xuan suspiciously. He also looked quite bedraggled. It seemed that someone had tried to rob him on the way. Ye Xuan smiled. He thought to himself that he should hide a change of clothes in the devouring space for such occasions. Ye Xuan took out his student badge and handed it to the young man. The young man was very surprised and asked where he got the student token. While the young man was examining the token and wondering where he got it, they stood at the gate to the sect's courtyard. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a young man, who appeared to be older than the one who had met him. The young man called him his older brother, Nin. He kept his eyes on Ye Xuan. He kept wondering who this beggar was. He sharply scolded the young man for talking to some beggar who was wandering around their gate. He asked why he was doing that. The young man tried to explain that Ye Xuan had come here as a student because he had presented his student ID. But the blonde-haired young man grabbed him by the arm, took him aside, and said indignantly that he would not believe it. He was not that naive. Ye Xuan's patience was running out. Who was he to refuse him entry and doubt him? The boy was almost crying from the way he was scolding him. He knew he would be punished. Brother Ning kept telling him to look carefully. Ye Xuan was dressed in rags, and he was sure that he was definitely a beggar. The appearance of a beautiful, striking girl with dark hair corrected the whole situation. She called out to Brother Ning, urging him not to mock the students. Ning said embarrassedly that Sister Guan had misunderstood. He was just teaching an inept student how to do his job properly. Guan asked him if he had already come down from the mountains. Walking beside her was a guy whom Ye Xuan had not noticed at first. She was too beautiful. Ye Xuan noted to himself that this girl was at the peak of the 7th level of martial arts. The red-haired guy next to her was in the middle of the 7th level. Ye Xuan assessed the situation. Taking Nile into account, it turned out that in such a short period of time, he had met 3 people with the 7th level. He didn't expect anything less from the sect of the Cleaved Cloud. It was good, and even more interesting. The couple was getting closer. The girl looked at Ye Xuan and felt that he had a very strong aura. The guy who came with her was talking to Nina about something, and he was quite indignant. Nin was angry and kept asking why this beggar was still here. The young man who first met Ye Xuan did not know what to say. Ye Xuan was no longer willing to tolerate these conversations about him. He told Nin that he must be deaf, because he had already said why he had come. Nin flew towards Ye Xuan like lightning. He was enraged, and asked how he dared to talk to him like that. He lunged at the young master. However, he immediately received a strong response to his attempt to strike, which sent him flying to the side. The girl had expected this, so she calmly told him not to judge a book by its cover. She knew that Xuan was at the peak of the 7th level of martial arts. Ning did not want to listen to her, and tried to gain the upper hand in their confrontation, but he received such a punch from Ye Xuan that he flew several meters forward. Unfortunately for him, he crashed into the railing, which shattered into pieces from the impact. Those present only gasped, unable to do anything else. Ning was already hanging over the precipice, imagining how he would crash to his death. Ye Xuan used his step to grab his cloak at the last second, saying that he had to be careful because they were at the top of 10,000 phantoms. He told him that if he fell, he would not be able to collect his bones. Ning shouted for him to pull him back. Ye Xuan decided to joke a little, so he pretended not to hear anything, saying that there was a strong wind here, but he wanted an apology. Ning understood this and shouted that he was wrong. He had behaved badly. He implored the young master to pull him out. Ye Xuan, having taught the arrogant Ning a lesson, saved him from falling into the abyss with one swift movement. Ning fell to the ground at the feet of his friends. The red-haired guy who had come with the girl seriously remarked that Ye Xuan was not to be trifled with, since he had dared to mock his man like that. His eyes clouded over with anger. Something told him that the stranger was an enemy sent to their sect. The young man who had been at the gate when Ye Xuan first arrived rushed over to him, begging him to listen. He said that it was a simple misunderstanding, and that this beggar had come to their sect as a disciple, and he even had proof. He handed the red-haired boy the disciple token he had received from Ye Xuan. Taking the token in his hand, the boy looked at it and, in a rage, simply broke it with one hand. Ye Xuan did not like this turn of events at all. The girl was also not entirely sure how her companion had behaved. The guy slapped the boy, reproaching him for being blind. He decided that the boy was definitely a spy sent by enemies. He had also almost ruined Nina. Ye Xuan stood and watched the aura of these two. The red-haired guy said that they would deal with him together with Nina. The girl tried to stop them, saying that all the tokens were issued personally by Elder Gong. She said that they could ask him personally. Besides, it wasn't right to fight now. The guys agreed with her and decided to do just that. They would take the guest to the elder. However, they still decided to beat him up first and rushed straight at Ye Xuan. Ning said that he should accept his fate. However, less than a second later, they saw that Ye Xuan had already disappeared from where he had been standing. They had no idea that the young master had thought everything through in advance, and a second after their attack began, he rushed towards them. He slammed their heads together. The girl who had been standing and watching was now convinced that even the two of them together would not be able to defeat him. Ye Xuan told Ning that he was a scoundrel and broke his bad. He asked if he understood what a mistake he had made. He was about to strike another blow at his opponent when suddenly someone's voice interrupted him. The man shouted that it was enough. It was a tall, middle-aged man with a long beard. He asked everyone what was going on. He was the sect's elder. Ye Xuan replied to the elder that he had come to the sect, and these guys had decided to test his cultivation, so they had decided to compete with each other. The girl, listening to this, decided that the guy was a liar. The elder replied that he knew who he was. He named him Ye Xuan from the city of Lianyun. The young man replied that this was all true, and that he was indeed that person. The elder suddenly started yelling at Ye Xuan. He said that his greed would drive him mad. He wanted to become stronger so badly that he resorted to elixirs. He saw Ye Xuan's martial arts level, and that the young man was already at the peak of the 7th rank at such a young age. Ye Xuan didn't know how to respond. The elder said he understood that the Ye family was not doing very well at the moment, but that was no reason to sacrifice his great future. He said that Ye Xuan should go to the outer sect and train until he got rid of his superficial strength. Then the same young man who had first met him approached and said he would take him where he needed to go. Ye Xuan did not understand why the elder had made such a decision. He decided that he did not consider himself superficial. But no one could argue with the elder's decision. He just looked after him and said he felt sorry for the boy. He turned to the two disciples and told them that even together, they had been unable to defeat this man with such superficial strength. They cried. The elder gave them both unsatisfactory marks, while the boys begged for mercy. At that moment, the young boy was already escorting Ye Xuan along the road. He told them that they should just go straight ahead, and then Ye Xuan put his hand on his shoulder and said that he was sorry that he had gotten hurt because of him. He gave him a bottle of medicine and said that it would help. The boy refused, saying that he knew how expensive the potion was. He said that nothing serious had happened to him and that his wounds were not deep. He would only need a couple of days to recover. But Ye Xuan replied that he had more. Ye Xuan felt that this boy was often treated unfairly. He asked him if they always treated him that way. The boy was not offended and was used to it. Ye Xuan decided to take him under his wing. He told the boy that from now on, he would help him, and he could call him Ye Xuan. The boy's spirits lifted, and he began to talk. He said his name was Niu, and his family lived in the village of Teshin, at the foot of the mountain. He had come here to fulfill his dream of becoming so strong that no one would bully him or his mother. He called Ye Xuan strong, and added that he wanted to be like him. Ye Xuan encouraged him by saying that one day he would be. He told the boy that he needed his help. Now, for example, maybe he could tell him how to become famous. The young man explained that he wanted to attract the attention of the elders, or even the head of the sect. Niu thought about it. One idea did come to mind. Actually, it could be done if he won 10 fights in a row. The elders would definitely notice him. Ye Xuan became interested in this idea. He asked him if anyone had ever done this before. Niu confirmed that Brother Meng had done so, and as a result, had been taken under the wing of the sect leader's assistant. Now Meng was the best student in the inner sect. Then he exclaimed that they had arrived. Deep in the forest, an inconspicuous little house appeared, with someone sitting near it. Niu waved his hand and shouted that Elder Gong had told him to accompany the new student. A man was dozing in a chair at a table, his face covered with a hat. There were some cards and a pen on the table. He looked at the guests, slightly uncovering his face. He clearly did not want to interrupt his rest now, but there was nothing he could do. Taking off his hat, he asked the newcomer's name, his origin, and his cultivation level. Ye Xuan introduced himself. He was from the city of Lianyun, from the Ye family. His cultivation was at the peak of the 7th level of martial arts. At this, the man raised his eyebrows in surprise. He was surprised that the guy was being enrolled in the outer sect, despite his level. Brother Niu immediately told the man the story of how this guy had just beaten up Nina and Lu near the entrance gate to the sect. The man continued to make the necessary notes on Ye Xuan's enrollment in the sect, and was not surprised. However, this sparked Ye Xuan's interest. He asked him why he wasn't surprised. Apparently, Ning and Lu were well known. The man continued to make notes in silence, while Brother Niu blurted out that Mr. Lu was the grandson of Elder Lu. Then the man handed over the key to the room where Ye Xuan would be living, saying that room number 19 was on the left at the exit. The boy accompanied him to his house. It was a dilapidated hut that looked more like a shed. Ye Xuan was not interested in any of this. He wanted to clash with someone as soon as possible to achieve his goal of coming here. He invited the boy Niu to come with him. He didn't even bother to look around his new home. He immediately hurried back along the path they had come, saying that there was no need to look at his room. To himself, Ye Xuan thought very angrily that he would never live in this shabby shack. At that time, in the martial arts arena of the sect of the Cleaved Cloud, the disciples were having another training session. Ye Xuan arrived just as it was in full swing, and everyone present turned their attention to him. He asked Niu to strike the gong to stop the training, thereby attracting everyone's attention. They all had one question: who was this newcomer? He stood next to Newer, away from the sect's disciples. His powerful aura spoke for itself. One of the disciples turned to Nuer and asked what he was doing and where he had brought this guy from, and if he wasn't afraid to lose his life. Nuer could say nothing more, except that this was Brother Ye, and that he wanted to perform in the arena today. A tall guy from the crowd shouted that he must be getting cocky if he wanted to do that right away. A group of disciples echoed him, saying that today was his first day since being accepted. One guy from the crowd was particularly active. He turned to the first one, called him Li, and said that he was the strongest among them, so he should teach him a lesson. Brother Li moved towards Ye Xuan, saying that this guy was indeed very confident and that he should get to know him better. Ye Xuan looked at Li condescendingly. He didn't want to waste his time. After all, he was clearly no match for him. This greatly angered Brother Li, who rushed at Ye Xuan with his fists and threats of swift retribution. But in that same second, he was the one who got hit. He was simply knocked several meters away from the newcomer. The confused students didn't know what to say. Then one of them came to his senses and said that Brother Li was 5th rank, and the newcomer must be 6th. Another guy shouted that they should call Brother Yu, only he was stronger than Brother Li. The crowd of students parted, and Brother Yu was already there. Yu was determined, because for the past 3 years, someone had finally decided to challenge him. He immediately rushed to attack Ye Xuan. One blow, and Yu was already lying on the ground. Ye Xuan praised him for his good momentum, but it was still not enough. Ye Xuan ordered Nuer to continue striking the gong. Nuer hesitated a little, because that would mean they were challenging the inner members of the sect to a fight. Ye Xuan was angry at the inappropriate comments. He loudly ordered him to strike, and not to object anymore. Nuer struck 3 times in a row. The sounds of the gong spread throughout the area, reaching the inner members of the sect. Talking among themselves, the two guys realized that the interval between battles was very short, and it seemed that the disciple was indeed very strong. But it was understandable, because the guys at the outer gate weren't that strong. Their conversation was interrupted by another strike on the gong. That meant 4 defeats in a row. They became very interested and decided to watch. At that time, in the martial arts arena, all the disciples watched the battles in shock, and then began to gossip among themselves. They whispered that this guy was an incredible warrior, and that he seemed to have come from the inner gates. They all wondered who he was, and asked if anyone knew. One boy heard Nair call him his new disciple. Some of the strongest students still continued to try to fight Ye Xuan. The old man with the beard separated himself from the crowd and said that he had overheard some rumors about this young man and was ready to share them. Everyone eagerly asked him to quickly tell them what he knew. He began to say that not much was known. In fact, all that was known was that his name was Ye Xuan and that he had only arrived at the outer gate today. There had been some kind of conflict with 2 followers, as a result of which Brother Lu and Nina had been beaten up. A red-haired girl in the crowd said she was surprised that he had been able to beat up 2 people at once. It turned out that Brother Ye was at least at the 7th level. Then it was no wonder that everyone lost to him and that it would not end well. Yixuan stood waiting for another stronger opponent. Finally, another disciple of the sect arrived, and again, he was not small in stature. Yixuan thought that this one was also weak. The red-haired girl encouraged him, saying that he must defeat the newcomer, but the result was the same. Yixuan's strongest punch sent his opponent flying to the side. He didn't even have to use any other skills. The girl was disappointed with the result, even though she had predicted it. The guys from the sect decided to teach this newcomer a lesson at all costs. After all, he had already had enough fun. Several guys grouped together for an attack and rushed at Ye Xuan all at once. But the outcome was the same. At that time, in a distant pagoda, where the head of the cloud of discord lived, the elders gathered. Chuan Gong found the venerable old man with one eye playing a game. The head asked Chuan Gong what he called pill addiction. Apparently, the effect was from their accumulation. The elder replied that he was too old. Another elder, Sei, joined the conversation and expressed his opinion that as soon as one reaches the 7 peaks of martial arts, one can immediately expect a great future. He added that it is necessary to accept a new student as one of the closest. Then, noticing dishonesty in the game, he began to shout that he would not allow himself to be robbed. He watched the game with the elders and began to say indignantly that these old men were too bad. Yixuan continued to defeat everyone, and only boldly, and with a smirk, asked who else was ready to fight him. All the boys looked cowardly at such a strong and fearless warrior and did not dare even breathe. There was an explosion. Suddenly, unexpectedly, a warrior flew at Ye Xuan from somewhere above. He had a fireball in his hands. Ye Xuan noticed this in time and turned around just as the warrior attacked him. An explosion thundered. The old man looked at his hands later and said aloud that he could now see the great power and might of the 8th rank bursting out from the 7th level. They seemed to be walking together. He looked seriously at the young master and asked if Ye Xuan had been cultivating since childhood. The latter just looked at him calmly and replied that he had guessed correctly. That was indeed the case. He replied that it was incomparable and gave his name. It was Elder Bai Li from the Cloud of Ruin. He asked Ye Xuan if he wanted to become his disciple. Suddenly, the head of the sect to which Ye Xuan belonged appeared out of nowhere and said that this old man had nothing to offer the young man except cracked palms. He added that it would be better if the young man joined his sect of the Split Cloud, where he would be provided with everything he needed. They began to argue with each other. Bai Li appealed to him to have a conscience. He was skeptical of his technique. Chuan Gong was not afraid of him, replying that his cloud-piercing foot technique was much more powerful than Bai Li's technique. Elder Si intervened in their rivalry, stating that if Ye Xuan became his disciple, he would give him 500 points every month. He added that, in addition, the founder was indebted to him. When the time came, he would ask to be taught the 1,000 magic hands technique. Both elders, who were arguing with each other, were outraged by his intervention. Bai Li told him that he had to wait his turn. Old man Sei did not believe that there was any order. He replied that he would stand up for the young man and defeat anyone who wanted to take Ye Xuan away from him. All 3 elders wanted Ye Xuan to join each of them. No one would give in to the others. Therefore, they decided to fight. They began to fight. It was no longer clear who had started it. All the disciples fell silent as they watched the brawl, because that's exactly what it looked like. Ye Xuan thought that none of them were right for him. However, he thought that they had given him the right to choose, but he couldn't get a word in. An imposing shadow appeared behind Ye Xuan and said in an indignant voice that what was happening was complete nonsense. The elders did not even pay any attention to the man who had approached. They continued to punch each other, continuing their fight and hitting each other wherever they could. This man turned out to be a rather tall, mature man with a long beard. He told them that the elders should be ashamed of their behavior. Finally, they saw who had come out of the shadows. This sobered them up. They folded their arms in greeting to the deputy of the Lord of the sect of the Cut Cloud. Ye Xuan heard their words and thought that he would finally see who this gentleman really was. The deputy head of the sect stood half-turned toward Ye Xuan, called him by name, and asked how old he was. Ye Xuan, slightly embarrassed, said that he had only turned 15 this year. The gentleman's gaze suddenly became stern and unfriendly. He clearly did not expect such a young disciple with such a level of martial arts skill. This look aroused Ye Xuan's suspicion. He thought that the gentleman looked at him very strangely. He even decided that perhaps the gentleman had some kind of hobby. After a moment of silence, the master also offered Ye Xuan to become his disciple. The elders were upset. Each of them wanted to get Ye Xuan. They begged him to leave him with them. Bai Li even reminded him about the disciple of Deputy Meng Zhu. He said that his longevity was coming to an end, and he wanted to create the true kingdom of yuan during his lifetime. He wanted his Yun clan to become the first in the Nanlin district. In general, after his death, he would definitely meet with the other elders and thank them. The trio had already heard the same thing last time. The deputy lord promised Yi Xuan 2 points per month and the opportunity to study all the martial arts of the Cloud Rift clan. That was not all. He also promised the technique of 1,000 magic hands. In addition, he knew an ancient secret recipe that could increase his physical strength tenfold. But it takes time to gather the ingredients for the medicine. If Ye Xuan agreed to join him, he would do everything possible. He also said that Ye Xuan could leave. The terms were 1 year, 6 months, and 3 months. The deputy lord handed Yi Xuan his identification token. He told him to get to know everyone for now. Later, he would visit him again and give him the necessary passing grades. Ye Xuan decided to ask where the teacher was going. He was interested in how long he would be away. The teacher replied that he was going to find medicinal herbs and ingredients for an ancient recipe. The clan was missing some items. They needed to be found. He added that Guan Yulan, his only female student, lived nearby, and that Yi Xuan could ask her for help if necessary. The teacher left. Before he left, Ye Xuan assured him that he didn't need to worry, because he already knew everything. He thought to himself that the teacher wasn't so bad after all. Later, Ye Xuan went to the outer gate disciples' quarters and saw Nuer chopping wood. He called the young man by name. Ye Xuan returned to the village because he needed to see Nuer. He decided that Nuer would help him. Nuer was surprised by his arrival, and at the same time, very happy. He asked what Brother Ye was doing there. Yi Xuan looked at the surprised Nuer. He replied that he had come to him because he wanted to ask something. He could get this information from him. He was interested in where the clan bought medicine. That was exactly what he asked the boy. During his time in the sect, Nuer had already learned a lot. He knew that they were purchased in the Lanyao pavilion, and was even ready to accompany him there. He led him along a road he knew well. Yi Xuan listened to him without question. He wanted to get to the pavilion as quickly as possible. Finally, they arrived. Before them stood a pagoda not very different from the others. Only the sign confirmed that it was the Lanyao pavilion. As soon as he crossed the threshold of the pavilion, the man behind the counter said his name and said he knew he had come for medicine. Ye Xuan answered affirmatively. He confirmed that the man was right and that he needed medicine, but he didn't know how many points he could spend. The guy behind the counter said that the deputy lord had already taken care of everything in advance. He had 6,000 points. Xuan didn't know what he could exchange them for. The guy said he could find this information in the exchange guide. He added that he would go get the book. It was quite large, with a beautifully decorated cover. The guy behind the counter explained that each page contained medicinal materials, with detailed information about the year of manufacture, use, and cost. Yi Xuan began to flip through the pages. The clan was very rich, and there were many of the best medicines that were scarce on the market. The guy said that not all of these products were high-end. There was a picture book full of ordinary products. However, he added that he did not bring it to him so as not to make him laugh. Yi Xuan praised him, saying that he was very good. The guy modestly remarked that he could not compare himself to the young master, and he understood that. He also said that if he liked something, he would pack it up. Hearing these words, Nuer called the guy behind the counter a common sycophant. The guy ignored his hint. Meanwhile, Yi Xuan was figuring out what he could buy from this catalog with his glasses. Blood dragon grass, Icebeard root, Yunsha vine. His points could only be exchanged for these 3 items. The guy looked at it and suggested that he wait for him a little while he went to get it. Nuer stood at the counter and dreamed that if he tried hard to complete the tasks, he would become stronger and be able to make many exchanges in the future. After listening to him, Yi Xuan just scolded him jokingly, pressing his face against the counter. Nuer cried out that it was his face, and it hurt a lot. By this time, the guy had already returned to them. He apologized for the long wait. He was holding several boxes in his hands. He put them in front of Ye Xuan, saying that they were for him. Ye Xuan was indeed tired. Taking them in his hands, he felt that he had something to eat. After consuming one of the boxes, the system announced that the consumption process had begun and had reached 73%. He continued to consume the boxes, one after another. His fatigue was already passing. The consumption process had reached almost 100%. Ye Xuan was a little upset that the system reported that, even after eating so many medicines for 8,000, he had not managed to break through to the 8th level. His brain began to think that he needed to find a way to earn even more points as quickly as possible. Brother Nuer noticed how nervous Ye Xuan was and asked the young gentleman what was wrong. Yi Xuan calmed down a little and assured him that everything was fine. It was time for them to leave. Leaving the shop, Yi Xuan kept thinking about the same thing. He asked Nuer what he needed to do to earn points quickly. Nuer had a brainwave. He replied that they needed a training pavilion. There, He could familiarize himself with the tasks published in the clan and receive rewards in the form of points. These were given to students immediately after successfully completing a task. He pointed to a red building in the distance. Yeshwen narrowed his eyes and looked closely, seeing a red pagoda standing alone on a rock. He slapped Nuer on the head with a book and told him to go back to his room and continue cultivating. Yeshwen also left him with a warning to always remember that he must not allow himself to be intimidated. After these words, Yeshwen used his step to break away from the spot and rush away. Tears welled up in Nuer's eyes. He was sad to part with his brother. Nuer thought he was a good person. In a matter of seconds, Yeshwen found himself in the courtyard of the training pavilion. There were already quite a few people there. His sudden appearance aroused the interest of those around him. They began to chat and gossip about him. Yeshwen headed for the wall where the task boards were posted, causing the crowd to whisper. The girls said he was handsome. Yeshwen greeted everyone and suggested they go about their business. He didn't understand why everyone was reacting to him like this. Approaching the wall with the signs, Yeshwen read several texts before one task caught his interest. It was a 7th rank mission, suppressing bandits from Mount Haeshui. He had to destroy the estate and bring back the head of the Supreme King Cao Hu. The reward for completing the mission was 700 points. Yeshwen understood from the tasks that there were no 8th rank missions here in the clan. The maximum was 7th rank. 7th rank suited him, and he decided that with his current power, which was equal to 8th rank, it would not be difficult to complete. He thought that in any case, he was going to the bandit's lair, and might be able to grab something else interesting to absorb. He announced that he was taking the task. The guy who registered the missions said that he had to sign up first, and then someone called out to them. Yeshwen saw that Brother Lu and the others who had been with him when they first met had entered the courtyard. Comments flew from the crowd that Sister was beautiful. They whispered that they hoped Brother Yi had not interfered with the clan. Ning asked them to wait. Yeshwen asked him what was going on. Brother Ning announced that they also liked this task. They would take it. The people in the crowd were puzzled by this and began whispering about what nonsense he was talking about. Yeshwen also found it strange. He had seen clothes and money being stolen, but this was the first time he had seen a task being taken away. He replied that they wanted to take this mission. They should try to win it. He would not give it up voluntarily. Ning flew into a rage and shouted that he could not refuse them. Lu calmed his brother's indignation by putting his hand on his shoulder. He asked if he was not being too presumptuous in taking on this task alone. Yeshwen did not hesitate for a moment and answered affirmatively. The red-haired guy said that he admired Yeshwen because he was not only strong, but also a brave warrior. He smiled slyly. Ning said that, after all, it was a long way across the water to the mountain. Cao Hu had already reached the 7th level of martial arts. He doubted that he would be able to complete this task. He added that he was afraid it would be difficult for him. Lu suggested that they join forces and asked Ye what he thought about it. After all, they belonged to the same family, so they could take care of each other. Yeshwen was fine with that. They just had to figure out the points. He suggested that they divide all the points equally after completing the task. Yeshwen voiced his proposal, saying that they would get 30%. He would keep 70 points for himself. Yeshwen thought this would be a fair decision. Brother Ning disagreed. He said that Yeshwen was taking too much for himself and didn't understand why he would get 70%. Unlike Ning, red-haired Lu agreed to these terms. However, he added that Yeshwen would have to deal with Cao Hu himself. Ning tried to argue with him about this. However, Lu briefly and clearly ordered him to shut up and not argue. The dark-haired girl, a student of the sect, stood quietly behind Lu the whole time and did not say a word. She was shocked by everything. The fact that they quickly agreed made Yeshwen think. He decided that there might be some hidden pitfalls in Haeshui, or maybe there was no reward at all. He understood that there must be something else. His intuition told him so. Yeshwen saw that Lu was quite clever. It seemed that the task must be interesting, in fact. Yeshwen commanded that if there was nothing more to discuss, it was time to move on, and they should tell him the details of the task themselves. After making a stop at the foot of Mount Haeshui, the trio said that according to information, 7 days ago, the mountain army had plundered a mountain village 100 miles away from Mount Lianyun and captured many people. They also captured people. Guan Yulan added that, in addition to eliminating the robbers, they needed to rescue the ordinary citizen. She looked at Lu and asked if he had a plan. Lu asked Yeshwen if he could fight the 3 leaders of Mount Haeshui if he encountered them. According to Lu's plan, Yeshwen should attract their attention. Meanwhile, he would go to the mountains to eliminate the other one and finally join them. Then the 4 of them would be able to surround all 3 bandit leaders. Lu praised Yeshwen. He said that he was very smart and understood everything correctly. Guan was worried because it was dangerous to withstand the siege of 3 7th-rank people, and if something went wrong, how could she explain it to the deputy? Ye Xuan noted to himself that Guan Yulan did not seem to be with them. Her zeal did not seem to be feigned. He decided that this was becoming interesting. Ning said that Brother Ye had 100 enemies in the clan, but now he was refraining from attacking the 3 7th-rankers. Looking at Ye Xuan, he asked if this was true. The guys clearly disliked the new student. Ye Xuan was not opposed to carrying out his part of the plan they had come up with, but he had doubts. Brother Ning insisted and asked why he wanted to refrain from their services in capturing the 3 leaders. Ye Xuan replied seriously that he could eliminate them himself, so he wanted them to do nothing. After a while, Guan Yulan opened her eyes, and when the dust settled, she saw Ye Xuan standing in front of her. She said in surprise that she was glad to see him. He replied, holding a wooden log in his hands, that crossing mountains was a bit troublesome. The young master knew that his return would make a strong impression on everyone. He threw the log sharply to the side, so that it flew hundreds of meters forward. His power was immediately apparent to all the boys. Ning asked Ye Xuan, in a dissatisfied tone, what he was up to now. Ye Xuan just laughed and said that it was not worth asking stupid questions. He began to move forward with quick jumps. He added that he had come up with an easier way to cross the mountain. Ye Xuan jumped on top of the log and flew on it. All the boys were amazed by what they saw. He rammed the log into the stone blocks. Ye Xuan, sitting on top, said that he was like Yan Wang himself. He shouted to Cao Hu that he had arrived and was already there. The disciples on the other side of the mountain saw something bright in the sky and said it was approaching. They became agitated and hurried home. Guan Yulan just rolled her eyes and said once again that Brother Ye was fooling around again. She turned to her colleagues, Lu and Ning, and asked if they even knew who Yan Wang was. The guys were simply shocked. And then the log hit the ground, and Ye Xuan himself stood up. Before him appeared the 3rd master, Cao Shu, the 2nd master, Cao Bao, and the 1st master, Cao Hu. They asked Ye Xuan who he was, and why he had entered their gate. The young gentleman introduced himself, saying that he had come to deal with all of them. One of the masters laughed, saying that the guy was still wet behind the ears. He immediately raised his bow and aimed an arrow at Ye Xuan. It was unexpected, but he managed to use his skill and stop the arrow with his palm. He said that they had decided to attack him. Ye Xuan also took out his bow, and pulling the string, added that he himself was an expert in such games with arrows. He said he was returning it to the bald man, and shot an arrow at him. The man did not even have time to dodge to the side. The arrow hit its target squarely. The man fell unconscious. The 2 masters were shocked that they had lost their brother. Cao Bao, shouting and threatening the young master, attacked him with a sword in his hands. He was furious, and quickly jumped into the sky, ending up right above Ye Xuan's head. Having thought through all of his opponent's moves in advance, Ye Xuan was already prepared for this confrontation. He dodged the blows, and quickly found himself on the roof of one of the buildings. Cao Bao's attack had no effect. Ye Xuan saw how heated these 2 masters had become, but he had no intention of surrendering to them. He aimed his bow at the 2nd master, and tested his random shooting skill, Shooting Star. The 1st master saw that this was an excellent ability of the stranger, and that they were all in danger, especially the 2nd brother. A couple of minutes later, Cao Bao felt the effect of Ye Xuan's falling arrows on his body. He was also eliminated. The 1st master, the only surviving leader of the bandits, began to scream. He saw that Ye Xuan did not stop firing his arrows. The people from his gang began to fall to the ground, unconscious. For many, it was all over in a couple of minutes. The 1st master was in complete shock. He tried to resist Ye Xuan's arrows and shouted at him to stop, but his fate was already sealed. The arrows pierced his body. In an instant, they pierced his soul, and he screamed in unbearable pain. He was still trying to attack Ye Xuan when he got out. However, the young master was prepared for such attacks, and instantly turned toward his opponent, holding his bow in front of his weapon. He understood that the speed and power of the 1st master had suddenly skyrocketed, and now resembled the 9th rank of martial arts. Ye Xuan thought to himself that the 1st master must have resorted to some auxiliary abilities and skills. The 1st master traced a circle around himself with his staff. Ye Xuan moved straight towards him. He quickly jumped from one place to another, thinking that this Cao Hu must have inherited something worthwhile. That was why Heishui Mountain was thriving. However, he couldn't understand what Cao Hu wanted. Ye Xuan kept thinking about it, and decided that there must be something else here. Lu was definitely hiding something back then. Ye Xuan realized that the 1st master's men were about to attack him from behind, and took his sword out of his time ring. He dealt them a crushing blow, and the system notified him that he had spent only 44 Devourer points. He took the power of combustion for himself. With it, he could use blood as fire and strength as fuel, and exchange it all for a short burst of energy. The effect was enhanced when used in conjunction with his lineage. Ye Xuan decided that now was his chance to use it. He used a 7th rank skill, but his combat power would be equal to that of a 9th level martial artist. The gang members were closing in on him, and Ye Xuan was ready to repel all their attacks. They tried to surround him. The whole crowd of gangsters was led by the first master, Cao Hu. He shouted that he would avenge Ye Xuan for the death of his 2 brothers, and that it would happen today. Everyone echoed him. However, Ye Xuan just stood calmly and looked at them, replying that he was ready for it. He added that if they really wanted it, then let them come at him and die here and now. The battle was fierce. Blood spattered in all directions. Ning and his brother Lu stood nearby and watched everything that was happening with their mouths open. Ning couldn't believe that Ye Xuan was really doing all this. Lu remained silent and then told everyone that they should go down there too. He added that he believed everything would be fine. Guan Yulan looked at the boys and said that they should not waste a minute. They rushed forward. Heishui Mountain was a very dangerous place, with a constant threat to life. However, today Ye Xuan himself had arrived here. He had dealt with all the bandits. Now Mount Heishui could exist in peace, and no one would restrict the freedom of the local residents anymore. The first master, Cao Hu, was still alive. He looked at Ye Xuan and told him that he couldn't believe it all. After all, he was too young. He believed that the young man couldn't be that strong. Ye Xuan turned around and looked straight at him, asking why he thought so. He wanted to attack the young master again, but in a second he fell from Lu's blade. It was all over for the first master too. He appeared the next second and casually asked if Ye Xuan was injured. He appeared at the very end of the battle. Ye Xuan looked at him as if he were another enemy. He couldn't figure out what secret this disciple of the Split Cloud sect was hiding. The young master looked at the guy and asked Brother Lu what it all meant. He looked a little aggressive. The latter just looked seriously at Ye Xuan and immediately tried to be calm. He replied that he had eliminated Cao Hu because he decided that he would attack Ye. That is why he decided to do it first. He advised Ye Xuan not to worry about it. The young master did not think so. He replied that Brother Lu should explain himself. Lu asked seriously what he wanted to know from him. He stood directly opposite Ye Xuan with his friends and was again not particularly friendly. Ye Xuan looked at him and asked directly what had happened to his inner spiritual beast. Brother Lu sighed heavily and said that there really was a spirit on Heishui Mountain. It looked like an ordinary dragon. Ye Xuan asked indignantly why he hadn't mentioned it before. After all, if there had been a lot of unnecessary movements in the battle, it would have attracted it. It turned out that Brother Lu had even hoped that Brother Ye would die here today at the mountain. He was angry with the guy. Then Ning tried to join the conversation and asked Ye Xuan, who had given him permission to rush into battle. Lu yelled at him. He ordered Ning to shut up and not interfere in their conversation. Ezhuan just chuckled at their argument. Lu said he admitted his guilt. He apologized to Yixuan for his mistake and added that he could rest assured. At the moment, the dragon was still too weak to attack. It was a female, and she had recently laid eggs. Ye Xuan understood that this was probably why Lu had decided to go and attack the dragon right now. Lu replied that they would do it together, which surprised the young master. The latter asked him what he meant, and Lu asked if Brother Ye was not interested. Brother Lu knew perfectly well why he was going there, and knew that Brother Ye might be interested in the real gold. He said that the spirit itself was an incredible treasure, and that its eggs would be worth at least 1 billion silver coins. Brother Yixuan really liked this idea, because he could absorb some of these treasures and improve his martial arts skills. He agreed. He told Lu that he was in, and that they could go inside the mountain. But first they had to complete their main task. Lu smiled slyly and replied that it went without saying. He ordered Brother Ning and Sister Guan to help them free the innocent inhabitants of the mountain. He added that Brother Ye would personally take care of everything related to Heishui's trophy. They agreed to meet at the lake near the mountain. Yixuan walked down the street humming songs. It was already night. He reflected on how all the fights had gone well. He was quite satisfied with the result. For many years, Heishui Mountain had done nothing but rob honest people. Yixuan decided that by taking the medicine, he would achieve his goal in no time. He would advance to the 8th rank of martial arts. In the future, he would be able to move the mountain itself. Lu and the others were waiting for him by the fire. When he saw Ye Xuan appear, Lu asked if he had managed to take care of everything. They freed all the gang's prisoners. The whole company rested and waited for the young gentleman. Ye Xuan replied that everything was fine and they could move on to their next task. Lu did not go into details right away and suggested talking on the way. Everyone got up to set off. Later, he began to tell them that a few months ago, he had heard rumors that Heishui Lake was teeming with various spirits. For this reason, he captured one of the members of Heishui Mountain, and as a result of interrogation, he learned that a newly born dragon lived in the lake. Yeishuan asked incredulously who his source was. He said what would happen if he provided inaccurate information. Sister Guan Yulan asked him not to worry. She said that the source was reliable and would definitely not deceive them. Lu added that Sister Guan was right. He had visited Heishui Lake last month and saw everything for himself. Lu spent a whole month preparing for this mission. After a while, they reached their destination, and Lu said that the entrance to the cave was right in front of them. Brother Lu was holding a substance that needed to be applied to the body to hide human scent. Lu said that this had to be done before entering the cave, and handed out jars of ointment to all the sect's disciples. He asked Yeishuan if he had any question. He knew it was better to clarify everything before entering, so that there would be no misunderstandings later. In fact, Yeishuan had one question. He was interested in why Brother Lu was so obsessed with spiritual beasts. He added that before he joined them, their chances of success were only 10%. So why were they taking such risks? Brother Lu thought for a moment. He didn't know how to answer Yeishuan. Finally, he began to tell a new story. He said that he didn't have much time left, and that his inevitable death was approaching. This news shocked everyone. Lu said that he had contracted some kind of disease as a child. At that time, it was announced that he would not live past the age of 25. Fortunately, the doctor gave him instructions, saying that he needed to drink the blood of a spiritual beast and then overcome the 8th rank of martial arts. He was now 24 years old, and in less than 3 months, he would reach his final 25th birthday. This was his last chance. After all, the doctor had given him instructions and said that he should drink the blood of a spiritual beast and then overcome the 8th rank of martial arts. He wanted to make good use of this time. After listening to Brother Lu Yueshuan's story, he turned to the others and asked what motivated them. Brother Ning replied that Elder Lu had saved him and brought him into the clan, and they had grown up with Brother Lu as if they were family. Now that he was in trouble, he couldn't abandon him. Sister Guan echoed him, saying that they should help each other. If he ever got into trouble, she and Yeishuan would try to save him without hesitation. Yeishuan found her words a little amusing. He thought Sister Guan was too naive and didn't understand how she could sincerely believe such nonsense. Brother Lu hurried them along. He said that since they had cleared everything up, it was time to enter the dragon's cave and get down to business. They entered the cave. Brother Lu led the way and told everyone to be very quiet in the cave. Deep inside the cave, among the protruding rocks, the dragon was sleeping. It was curled up in a ring, in the middle of which lay 2 enormous dragon eggs. Sister Guan Yulan saw the dragon with her own eyes for the first time. She thought that this was the Heishui dragon, and considered the spirit to be an ugly beast. Hiding behind the rocks and observing from there, Brother Ning asked Lu if they were really going to destroy it. Brother Lu confirmed that this was indeed their goal. He watched the sleeping lizard closely. Brother Ning was very doubtful about the success of their plan, saying that it was huge, and he doubted they would be able to destroy it. Brother Lu assured him not to worry, because he had a plan that he had been planning for a long time. He placed a vial of green liquid in Brother Nin's hand, saying that it was a special poison. It couldn't destroy the dragon, but it would definitely weaken its power. Lu ordered Nin to take the poison and go to the edge of the cliff. All he had to do was pour the poison from the vial directly onto the dragon from above. Ning replied that he was very afraid. He told Lu that he was apparently not as brave as his brother. Brother Lu reassured him. He said that he just had to pour the poison. There was nothing dangerous about it. They would destroy her as soon as the medicine took effect. Ning reluctantly agreed to participate in all this. Yeishuan sensed something was wrong. Brother Ning made his way to the very edge of the cliff. The dragon was lying directly below him. It was asleep. Ning felt himself shaking with fear. He began to open the vial of poison with trembling hands. His hand shook, and the vial slipped out of his hands. The poison fell rapidly, right above the dragon. It was a complete fiasco, and Ning understood that. Brother Lu shouted at him that he was doing something completely stupid. He understood that the vial would break, and then the dragon would wake up. And that's exactly what happened. The vial of poison hit the ground, and the green liquid spilled out, missing its target. The dragon, who had been asleep until then, woke up from the noise. His eyes opened and lit up with a bright, threatening light. The next moment, the dragon roared and soared upward. His scales stood on end. Its terrifying head loomed directly over Nino, who was still sitting on the edge of the cliff, trembling from what was happening. It had already aimed its huge clawed paw at him. Another moment, and he would have become its prey. Yeishuan saw what was happening, and instantly pulled out his bow. He shouted to Nunu to be careful, and aimed his arrows at the dragon. The huge lizard was so enraged that it struck the ground with its tail. It did so with such force that everything around it shook. Sister Guan also saw that Ning was in great danger and decided to help him on her own. She decided to distract the dragon by provoking its fury. The dragon turned away from Ning, and Yi Xuan took advantage of this. Leaping high above the dragon, Ye Xuan shot his arrows at the terrifying spiritual beast. Its roar immediately echoed throughout the cave. The arrows hit it in several places. It was definitely wounded. Yu Xuan dodged the dragon's attack and fell to the ground in the very spot where the contents of the broken poison vial had spilled. The system displayed a message that he was poisoned. He used the 100 Flowers skill and began the absorption process. Ye Xuan realized that it was poison and that he had fallen right into it. At that moment, the dragon writhed, trying to get rid of the arrows lodged in its body. Guan Yulan understood that it would not be easy to deal with this beast and asked Lu what to do. Lu said that they needed to wait a little because the poison would take effect very soon. He still hoped for a normal outcome. Brother Ning had already regained consciousness a little. He understood that he had to go to help. However, the dragon caught him with its tail, and he fell off the cliff. He caught the dragon's egg without even noticing, and it broke. Lu Guan Yulan and Yi Xuan realized that this was very bad. The dragon froze, its yellow eye glowing in the darkness of the cave. The scene was terrible. He noticed that he had lost one of the eggs. Brother Lu said resignedly that they were now even closer to failure. He was not happy about this at all. The dragon went berserk after what Nin had done. Its huge mouth opened in a roar, ready to swallow them all at once. Ye Xuan had just thought that this was bad when, right in front of him, his sister Guan first flew up and then immediately began to fall down. The dragon was furious. He rushed around the cave, destroying everything in his path. And he hit the girl. She fell, groaning in pain. The next victim was Ning. He was closest to the lizard. The dragon lunged at the boy. Ning jumped to the side, literally a meter away from the dragon's fang. However, this did not save him in the end. The blow reached its target. The dragon closed its mouth, and blood gushed out. Nina was no longer alive. Yi Xuan assessed the situation, and, using his speed, found himself at the top of the ledge, taking a comfortable position for battle. He calculated the trajectory of the arrow and drew the bowstring. There was little chance of success. His gaze was focused. He wanted to hit the dragon with a precise shot, and he succeeded. Brother Lu exclaimed enthusiastically, praising Ye Xuan for his accuracy. The arrow hit the dragon right in the eye. The dragon became enraged and was ready to attack. After all these attacks had only wounded him, but not pierced his scales completely. Brother Lu decided to help Yi Xuan, who was standing in front of the dragon and ready to repel its attacks. He jumped up sharply and leaped onto the dragon's back. He had a sword in his hand. He struck the dragon in the neck with it. Brother Lu managed to pierce its armor. Dragon blood gushed from the wound. The spiritual beast's gaze faded, and ice crystals began to form around it. It seemed to be turning into a glass statue. Yi Xuan and Sister Guan watched the last moments of the dragon's life. A few moments later, it fell right at Guan's feet. Lu's low-level blade was able to pierce the dragon's armor, and it finally froze. Guan was losing her last strength. Ye Xuan leaned over her and asked if she was okay. Guan stared intently at Lu's blade, but said that she was fine. Brother Lu noted that his sister was right, as always. Only a spirit weapon could pierce the armor, and only he knew this. Guan Yulan said that fortunately, Brother Lu had prepared well for this trip. Otherwise, they would not be alive now. Ye Xuan confirmed this. He said that they had dealt with that, but where could they get the antidote now? Sister Guan perked up and asked Ye Xuan what kind of antidote it was. She didn't know who it was for. Lu looked down at Ye Xuan and replied that he didn't think he would notice that he had stepped in a poisonous puddle. Spreading his arms with a smile, he said that he did not have an antidote with him. From his answer, it was clear that he had planned everything. Only now did Ye Xuan figure out Lu's plan. From the very beginning, he had planned to get rid of them. Lu looked at everyone and replied that he wanted not only to eliminate them, but also to take their blood, every last drop. Guan did not recognize Lu. She said that he was strange, and asked him why he was hurting people. Brother Lu just spread his arms and replied that Sister Guan had always been too naive and virtuous. Guan was very upset. On top of that, she suddenly felt ill. She clutched her chest and groaned. Brother Lu was already anticipating feasting on fresh blood. He thought it would happen very soon. He ran his finger along the edge of the blade and said happily that it was time. Guan realized that he had poisoned her too. It seemed that the poison had begun to take effect, and her sister was feeling very ill. Drops of blood appeared at the corners of her lips. She began to cough. Ye Xuan supported Guan in every way he could. Even now, he stood holding her slightly. He only wanted to know from Brother Lu how he had made the poison. Lu just chuckled ominously and said he had decided to give them a hint. He added that he had given them all some qi ointment. Yeshuan understood what the clue was. Lu had simply mixed his poison into the ointment they had all rubbed on themselves at the entrance to the cave. Brother Lu noted that Yeshuan was very clever. However, looking at him, he added that it would not help any of them now. Lu had added chaos grass to the qi ointment. The grass is not toxic to the body in its pure form, but as soon as it came into contact with any poison, the effect of the poisoning increased several times over. Yeshuan thought that it was no wonder that as soon as they reached the cave, the system immediately gave him its hint. Lu raised his hand, in which he held a bloody ball. It was a spiritual beast pill. He said that by eating it, one could enter the true spiritual realm. That was his real goal. He approached the group, and turning to Guan, said that he knew the pain was unbearable, but that there was no need to worry, and that it would all be over soon. Guan raised her head with her last ounce of strength and looked directly at Lu. She wanted to say something to him, but immediately lost consciousness. Yishuan barely managed to hold her. Lu didn't understand why Yeshuan was fine. He asked why the poison had no effect on him. He decided it was because of his unique abilities. At that moment, the Devours system reported that the test was complete. The poison had been completely removed from Yeshuan's body. At that very second, Lu received such a kick from Yeshuan that he flew to the side, spraying blood. They pounced on each other and continued the fight. The resistance was powerful, and they seemed to be entangled in clouds of smoke and dust. As soon as things calmed down a bit, the spiritual beast pill was in Yeshuan's hand. This really surprised Lu. Yeshuan said that villains always perish, and the reason for this is excessive talkativeness. Lu almost cried out of despair. He just kept repeating that it couldn't be that Yeshuan himself wasn't poisoned. After telling Lu that a scoundrel like him was not worthy of living, Yeshuan used his hand skill. He added that today, the boy would go to heaven. Fear appeared in Lu's eyes. He could not resist Yeshuan. He could feel it. The young master headed straight for Lu with his fist. At that moment, Lu's grandfather, the clan elder, appeared next to him. He was about to hit Lu, but Lu was taken away from that place in time, and Yishuan's fist hit the stone floor of the cave. The young master failed to finish what he had started. Lu shouted joyfully for his grandfather to destroy Yeshuan and take the beast's pill. Yeshuan recognized Lu's grandfather as the elder of the Scattered Cloud clan. Only now did he understand who this guy was. The elder threw Lu over his shoulder and declared that the beast was returning, and they had to leave. He himself was wounded. Yeshuan thought it was very bad that the dragon was returning. It turned out that they had only neutralized it, but not killed it completely. Guan remained unconscious. Yeshuan picked her up and headed for the cave exit, but they did not manage to leave the lair of the spiritual beast. They hid behind a large rock. At that moment, a cobblestone fell nearby. The dragon flew into the cave, sniffing around as if it had lost something. It destroyed everything in its path. Yeshuan thought that this old man and his grandson were no fool. They had planned everything from the beginning, and were going to kill everyone here. The lizard saw the dragon's egg. They were lying where the dragon had guarded them. Only one was broken. When the dragon saw this, he flew into a rage. His eyes filled with blood, and his scales stood on end. The clan elder saw that the spiritual beast was enraged, and decided to get out of there as quickly as possible. Yeshuan thought that this was a battle with the true dragon He Shui, and that they had no chance. Standing behind a rock, Yeshuan thought about how the dragon He Shui and old man Lu had come out of the water. Yeshuan took his bow out of his spatial ring. He knew that battle was inevitable, and it seemed that his true moment had come. He pulled back the bowstring and took aim. Grandfather Li ran with his grandson in his arms toward the cave exit. He wanted to get away from there as quickly as possible. Yeshuan pulled back the bowstring, took careful aim, and released the arrow. It hit the stone arch above the exit. There was an explosion, and a shower of rocks blocked the cave exit. Grandfather Li started yelling at Yeshuan, asking why he did that. The dragon was really close. He was about to say that it looked like the guy was going to die here today, but at that moment, the dragon's claw pierced his chest. Yeshuan continued to shoot arrows at him, replying that whether he died here today or not, it shouldn't matter at all. The young gentleman quickly fired several arrows from his bow, aiming specifically at the stone arches of the cave. A heavy rockfall began, and the dragon was slightly hit by the boulders. It roared with rage, while Yeshuan hid behind a rock. He tried to buy himself and Guan some time to escape from the cave. Yeshuan lifted the girl into his arms again. She was still weak and completely unconscious. He could feel her strength leaving her. Time was running out. Yeshuan ran to the exit and found a way through a river hidden under the rock. He dove into the depth. Holding the dying girl close to him, Yeshuan swam to the cave exit. The dragon realized that his attackers were escaping into the water and just roared with rage. Ye Xuan knew he had very little time and called upon the blood consumption skill system. It reported that the exchange had been successful and that Ye Xuan had spent 230 Devourer points on it. After a while, he and Guan, in his arms, surfaced at the foot of Heishui Mountain. They were so close to death. However, Ye Xuan looked around and decided that it would definitely be safer for them to stay here for the night and rest. He decided to stay away from the place where the dragon lived. With Guan in his arms, he ran deep into the forest. A little later, he stopped to set up camp and lit a fire. Guan was burning with fever. He knew that the poison would soon spread throughout her body, and if it was not removed, it would be too late for her. Then he suddenly remembered that he had recently consumed the blood of Bai Hua himself. Ye Xuan decided that his blood might already be purified. He lifted Guan by the shoulders and sat her down next to him. He thought that he simply had no other option to save her life. He cut his arm with a knife and let Guan's lips touch the blood. He knew it would not be easy. The girl's body had to fight the poison on its own. He laid her on the grass. She was barely breathing, and Ye Xuan took a desperate step. He decided that she would definitely forgive him for this, and after drinking a little blood from the cut, he leaned toward her face. He let it flow into her mouth. It was like a kiss, and after a while, Sister Guan suddenly opened her eyes and saw Ye Xuan's face in front of her. The image was still very blurry, but she came to her senses, and her body began to fight the poison and purify itself. Ye Xuan laid the girl down on the grass, and she fell into a deep sleep. She still needed to regain her strength before she could fully recover, but he had saved her. Looking at Guan's rosy cheeks, Ye Xuan decided that she seemed to be much better. He realized that it didn't take that long to purify her blood, and then he felt dizzy. This was unusual for him, and he decided that he himself had lost too much blood from the cut. Before he could do anything, he suddenly lost consciousness and collapsed directly onto Guan's body. Morning came. Birds sang in the trees. The girl woke up first and was surprised to see the young gentleman lying on top of her. She was embarrassed by his behavior and even slapped him in the face. He woke up and she began to apologize. Ye Xuan replied that it was not her fault, but his. Last night, he had removed the poison from her body. He asked how she was feeling. She replied that she still felt weak, but that it didn't matter anymore. Ye Xuan replied that it was wonderful. He brought her a bottle. Ye Xuan told Guan that she needed to drink it. It would help her recover faster. She took the medicine, and the young gentleman told her that it was made from secret herbs that couldn't be bought anywhere. After drinking it, Guan said that it was a very pleasant and good medicine. She already felt much better. Looking at the mountain, she said that it resembled the ridge of the 18 mountains of Lanyun. She added that she was lucky not to have fallen into the hands of monsters. She remembered how she had lost consciousness in the cave. Ye Xuan replied that he didn't think they were particularly lucky. He took the very same spiritual beast pill he had taken from Lu out of the inner pocket of his robe. Guan Yulan looked at the young master in surprise. She knew what it was. He said that he believed it was the energy of the pill that was keeping the demons of the Lanyun Mountains from attacking them. Ye Xuan thought to himself that it was good that he had at least remembered to take it with him. It was luck. Guan asked him what had happened in the cave after she lost consciousness. She didn't remember anything. Ye Xuan told her that Lu Puping wanted to kill her, and all of them. However, he managed to subdue him. Then, unexpectedly, an old man appeared. He ran straight out of the water and turned out to be Lu's grandfather. Guan asked if the clan elder himself had arrived there. She was very surprised by this and wanted to know how he got there. She kept asking Ye Xuan to tell her what happened next. He smiled at her and replied that the dragon attacked them all again. He took advantage of the opportunity and grabbed the girl and ran away from the cave. Before entering the water, he saw the end. He said that the dragon killed the two in the cave by piercing them with its claws. Guan said that it turned out that Lu knew about all this, and the elder was also directly involved in his plan. Ye Xuan replied that he believed that Lu himself had planned everything, mainly for his grandson. He prepared carefully and sent his grandson on a hunt. However, something still puzzled him. Lu said at the time that he wanted to drink their blood. Ye Xuan did not understand if he was using something sinister. Guan said that she did not fully understand it either. She asked what they were going to do. Many members of the clan had seen them, but most of the team had not. Ye Xuan stood up and said that when they returned from the mission, Elder Lu himself appeared. He took several young disciples on a mission, and he knew nothing more about them. Guan replied that it sounded good. Ye Xuan suggested that his sister Guan rest a little, while he was going to go hunting and get them something to eat. Guan warned him that it was very dangerous here. She advised him to be careful. He understood everything. He walked a couple of kilometers and caught some kind of bird for lunch. Ye Xuan roasted it on a fire. The aroma spread throughout the area. Guan was very hungry. When Ye Xuan handed her the food, she was very happy. Taking it, she thanked Ye Xuan for his care, adding that she was not as powerful as he thought. Looking at him shyly, she added that he could just call her Yulan. Her cheeks flushed red. Ye Xuan was also a little embarrassed by everything that was happening. He asked again whether to call her Eula or Yulan. The reward for their mission was a pill. He said that he needed it himself, so he could compensate her somehow and give her some resources. Guan was even upset by what Ye Xuan said. She shook her head negatively, saying that it wasn't worth it. She understood perfectly well that it was he who had saved her, and therefore she owed him her life. How could she ask him for anything? Ye Xuan assured her that it was nothing. Everything was fine, and he would gladly do it again. Ye Xuan suddenly remembered again how he had saved her life. He thought that if she knew how it had happened, he would blush again. They sat by the fire, each thinking about the past day in their own way. Guan was eating roasted bird. At one point, a rustling sound caught their attention. A dark shadow with eyes glowing in the twilight flashed nearby. It jumped right at Guan. It was a wild, fluffy cat. Before Guan could recover from the surprise, her roasted chicken disappeared right out of her hands. The furry creature grabbed its prey in a second and ran away. Angered by such unheard-of audacity, Guan ran after it, shouting and waving her stick. Ye Xuan, observing this scene, gave them a little time to catch up. Using his skill of speed walking, he instantly caught up with the animal. He said that this animal had a lot of courage, since it dared to approach and take their meat. It even fought with Ye Xuan for its prey. At one point, Guan even feared for the cat. She suddenly changed her anger to mercy and shouted at Ye Xuan to let it go. Ye Xuan was stunned by her words. How could he let it go when he had almost finished with it? The kitten, all ruffled and out of breath, jumped into Guan's arms, realizing where to seek protection. Guan pulled him up by his paws and showed him to Ye Xuan, saying that she could see what a cutie he was. It was a male kitten. Ye Xuan thought to himself that the animal was not cute at all, and wondered if she had stopped him because of this monster. However, he kept quiet. Seeing how much Yulan liked this kitten, he decided to leave it alone. The girl began to gently stroke the cat's fur. Guan hugged the kitten lovingly, but the kitten was uncooperative at first. It was a little wild and not used to gentle hands and care. She didn't know how to hold it. It scratched and meowed loudly. Its whole appearance betrayed its discontent. Such a beast would be difficult to tame. Ye Xuan decided to help Guan. He said it was easier than she thought. He turned to the good behavior purchase system and made an exchange. The system showed that the exchange was complete. As a result, only 10 Devourer points were spent. Guan saw a glass bottle with green balls in his hand and asked with interest what it was. Ye Xuan replied that they were pills for good and obedient training. He said that they could be used to make the cat obey its owner. He picked up the kitten and put a pill in its mouth. It fell asleep immediately. Guan was very worried. However, Ye Xuan explained to Guan that the kitten would become calm towards the first person it saw immediately after waking up. Ye Xuan handed her the peacefully sleeping kitten. She carefully took the animal. When the kitten began to wake up, Guan's image was reflected in its eyes. The pill had worked immediately. The girl looked into its eyes and exclaimed admiringly how beautiful and cute they were. The kitten didn't let her finish and threw itself into her arms. Ye Xuan handed her a bottle of pills and told her that they would gradually improve it, overcoming the limitations of its own pedigree. There were 10 pills in the bottle. He advised her to give it one from time to time, and when it had consumed all 10, it would recognize her as its owner. She was so grateful to Ye Xuan for his care and for the new pet that she asked the young master to give her kitten a name. Ye Xuan was embarrassed, but after thinking for a moment, he suggested naming him Qin Yu. He thought the name suited him. Guan liked the nickname. She began to call him that. Everything was wonderful. Suddenly, the kitten became alert and pressed closer to Guan. They heard the crackling of trees, and a face appeared from behind the bushes, shouting to someone that he had found them. He told his master about it. Then, the first to emerge from the bushes was the terrifying and awkward Zhang Xiang. He saw Ye Xuan and said in his nasty voice that he was hiding here. He was curious to see who would help him in the fight this time. Ye Xuan was very surprised to see him. He thought that since then, the little guy had understood everything and would no longer pick a fight with him. Guan was surprised by another man walking next to Zhang Xiang. She knew who he was and called him by his name, Fan Yue. He was a tall, dark-haired man with a stately build. He turned to Sister Guan and said that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. He walked straight up to them. which made Guan unhappy. She didn't want him to come near. Zhang Shang stuck out his snake-like tongue and yelled that it was Ye Xuan who had broken his arm back then. He had brought Fan Yue to settle the score with the young master. Ye Xuan calmly said that it had only been a few days since his arm had healed. He added that it was his father who had hurt him. Guan warned Ye Xuan to be careful with the leader. He was the son of the Fan family in Nanyang, and moreover, a follower of the Split Heaven clan. During last year's competition, he had already reached the 9th level of martial art. The girl looked at this man with horror. Guan added at the end that he was a cruel and inhuman person by nature. Many brothers and sisters had died at his hands. Ye Xuan listened carefully. Fan Yue told them that they were brave to dare to harm his clan, and that they would pay for it with their lives. Ye Xuan replied sharply that he thought they would not succeed. He looked straight at his opponent and showed his determination with his whole demeanor. Fan Yue flew into a rage and immediately responded to the young man's insolence, telling him not to be so cocky. He ordered the son of the city's ruler to attack, and together with Zhang, they rushed at Ye Xuan with the intention of killing him and Guan along with him. Standing next to Guan, Ye Xuan told her that he would take care of the three of them and leave the rest of the enemy to her. Guan realized that they would have to fight together. She replied to Ye Xuan that she was ready to go with him to the end and accepted the fight.